Oh, let's knock this out.
Let's
All right,
knock it out.
I pressed the button.
I'm ready to knock it out.
Yeah, we're live,
Mama said knock this show out.
and we will. What's up, everybody?
Hi.
Look at this mess behind me. I'm just realizing. Now we hang out.
Not like that much of a mess.
I don't know. Here, one sec. I'll improve it. Brian, entertain the masses for a second.
Oh, okay. Uh It's not that messy. I actually think it looked more messy when it was just like two random toys or things like that. That actually looks more messy. We'll see how Elon feels about that.
Right.
Elon,
Yo.
I actually think it looks messier now.
Okay. I thought maybe the kids' toys are like a nice touch.
I think like this like no, before it looked like a thoughtful, like purposeful, intentional like kids station.
Mm-hmm.
And now it just looks like yeah, like two random toys got thrown there and someone was too lazy to clean them
All
up.
right. One sec. One sec.
I know I'm
Uh,
just it's not oh gosh. You know, Elon is a bit of like an under the radar type A guy.
every morning I take Noah here and we look out the window and she plays with toys and looks at like dogs walking by out the
Does she
window.
does she care about the dogs?
No, she loves the dogs.
Yeah. Like how do
She,
you know she loves the dogs? What's the tell?
like she's like goes ah! And she like points
Uh,
and she like
she like coos at the
looks
dog.
yeah, we go out to walk Cody every whatever once or twice a day, and then if there's other dogs around, there's a little dog park area behind us, and she like walks up to dogs now and like tries to pat them. Like she's obsessed with dogs. She loves dogs.
That's
It's great.
awesome. Good for you. I think it's good to yeah, to raise a dog lover. I failed at that.
Well, you need it. It helps to have a dog.
Yeah, for sure. I wonder if like if Noah like Noah probably has a sense of like the timing of each dog's walk too. And
Hmm.
like I wonder if one's missing. I bet she notices.
I don't know. You're good.
It's like her whole life.
I don't think she's that like she is like I am able to say like where's the cow and she could point to a cow, but I don't know if she's like able to schedule the
She probably
dogs.
knows like she sees like the brown dog and the white dog and the
Maybe.
black dog and like she just goes brown to black. I bet she has a moment where oh, I guess the white dog's not here today.
I wonder. I can't wait to ask her. But anyway, let's entertain the masses. I don't know if we're doing it yet, but
Aren't we already?
is this great? I need to up my energy here. Get some
Woo!
water.
Woo! That was like a you remember MLB for Nintendo? I think I made this joke like 400 episodes ago. Woo! No, I can't do it anymore. Woo! No, it's the sound a fly ball
Okay.
makes.
Okay.
Woo! It's not it
Good.
either.
That was great.
Do you know it though?
No,
Never played MLB for
I never had
NES?
it. I didn't have an NES.
Neither did I. You didn't have a friend?
Not that I
I
didn't have friends that were into
specifically,
sports.
I spec- I mean, did you have friends who were into video games?
Like I didn't have friends that had sports video games. They only
Mm,
had like Mario and like Mega Man.
I think I went out of my way to make friends with kids who had video games because I
Yeah.
didn't.
Yeah, me too. Well, I mean, more like I
You,
just tried to invite myself over to the houses of my friends that had video games.
yeah, like my
I
next
wasn't
door
like
neighbor.
so yeah, it's hard to like make friends. I don't know. I just made friends. Anyways, who cares? Okay, let's start the show
You've
here.
never had a hard time making friends.
I mean, I don't know.
Elon, Elon's like a really good friend maker.
I don't have that many friends.
That is
I
not
have
true.
openings.
How was your
It's
dad hang out? Just quickly. I want to start the show.
it was okay, so why'd you ask?
Well, because I want to know
It was good. I drank 4 beers. I got pretty tipsy at the end.
where did that fit in like among on the spectrum of dads drinking?
I think I know. I think we all had around 4 beers. Like it wasn't too
Okay.
crazy.
Yeah. Nice.
But yeah, we talked about some hockey. There's a guy I went on. I had like a sidebar with this guy Aaron, and we talked about the Canucks because he's a Canucks fan, and he was like being like, I don't know. I ended up like trying to make the argument to him that the worst thing the Canucks ever did was that trade for OEL, and I was telling him about like the cap like that, they're going to be eating forever or whatever. And then he was saying like about Louis Erickson signing maybe also, and it's like connected because I don't know. So we had a whole conversation about all the mistakes the Canucks have made, we both agreed the Canucks are in great shape right now, looking good.
They look so great. The Canucks are in as great shape as Brock Besser was coming into training camp 3 years ago.
Oh, save this for the show. Let's start the show,
Okay.
and you use that great joke. What's my
Oh,
joke,
I
by the
don't have
way?
an episode title.
Well, think about it. I don't have an opening joke, but we're just gonna go with it. Okay?
What if I just said ridiculous things and then hoping that one of them,
Yeah. I mean, isn't that yeah, that works.
like, how about Hoochie Kucherov over there?
Well, no, that's really terrible. But
Yeah.
you could try it.
All right, chat, if you can hit me with a Kucherov show title in the next 3 minutes.
I feel like Vasilevsky would be more like topical. Or either.
Um,
Both are exciting news this week.
yeah, I don't know. It's nice to give Kucherov his due when he's earned it. I mean, like Vasilevsky's played a game. Good for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. But what should I say for my joke? Okay. Yeah! Yeah, 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 yeah! So welcome everybody to another episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the longest running fantasy hockey podcast in the world, hosted by two guys who, Brian, I'm going to speak for myself here. I'm not that excited about Columbus's great schedule next week because I really want to freaking drop Patrick Laine, but I guess I got to give him a little bit of time. This guy, how does he get nothing today? Bah! I'm your host, Dylan Dabrowski. Very excited for this show where we've got so much to talk about. Big headlines. We've got hot and cold streaks. We've got accountability checks. We've got it all. And the person who's going to work through all of this data from the past 5 days of NHL action, because 2 of the days nothing happened, but we still have a lot. It's the fantasy hockey robot, the poop prognostication, the IPP MVP himself, Brian Cohn. Welcome to the show, Brian. How's it going?
Whoa, hey, I'm good. Elon, thanks for the big Michael Buffer. Look out. Here comes Elon. It's great. Thanks. Yeah, no, I'm doing good. Happy to be here this Sunday to talk about all the players that I wish I drafted on my fantasy team. You and I are having our share of struggles in the cupful, the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League, kkupfl.com. But I mean, as we mentioned last week, I don't. Hey, we're still going to give you the goods, right? We're going to give you everything that we know about players. And there actually is a section tonight about things that Brian has been right about. And I'm really, really thrilled. Like that could be the whole show, honestly. And I'd be okay. It might be like 7 minutes.
You'd like that.
Yeah. No, I think I've been right about a lot. It's just, it's hard to action it necessarily on your fantasy roster. But hey, we're here to at least give you the correct information, as correct as possible. It's up to you to make it work for you, but we're here for you.
We're going to try our best. To be fair, I can still win my couple matchup this week. I'm up by 3. I've got Forsberg and Troy Terry versus Kyle Connor. So in theory, but of course we know that Troy Terry is going to have 0. So it's basically Forsberg versus Kyle Connor at this point. It's going to be tough, but I'm a little frustrated. I was off the air telling Brian I was like projected to win by 40. And then just slowly but surely, Fenner just like keeps on getting points and points. And my guys just like, Laine 0, Fantilli 0, Slavin. It's just like yesterday, like Palmieri 0. Like anyone I have a hunch, whatever. Anyways, that's fun. We're having fun. It's fantasy hockey.
And you know what? Like beyond this doom and gloom, there's one league that I was also like in the cellar for. It's a points only league. It's a friends league. I was like, yeah. The cellar's in the basement. Right. Same thing. And I am rising the ranks. Like I am now, like I'm climbing. I'm 4th now.
Hey.
Yeah. And so like there are some good things happening. And that's honestly entirely on the backs of my St. Louis Blues. I have Buchnevich and Robert Thomas. And like a week or two into the season around the St. Louis Sucks rant, like that's part of why I said it was because I was so frustrated. Like I used good draft capital on these. So I'm like, good. I got like the 2 guys or 2 of the 3 guys on a bad team, but it doesn't matter. Like they're going to have good seasons. And now they are. So I don't know. It feels weird to be winning because Buchnevich and Robert Thomas are picking it up. But here we are. They're doing great.
And Brian, I guess
I also added Cam Talbot out of free agency in that league too. Yeah,
it must have hurt, but you did it.
No, I No, the cognitive dissonance is gone every time I make the Devin Dubnyk comparison.
Okay. So I guess I had a plan that we were going to start the show talking about Vasilevsky returning, but you brought up Buchnevich and Rob Thomas. So let's just like jump right ahead. I'm gonna crazy swerve if you're looking at the show notes here, but let's jump to their line mate in the last couple of games. Who's this Jake Neighbors guy? All of a sudden, Jake Neighbors playing on this top line with Buchnevich and Robert Thomas. He scored 2 goals today. That brings him up to 5 goals in his last 5 games for again, Jake Neighbors, who is actually not a nobody. Like I'm seeing he was drafted in the first round, though I know Brian always likes to point out late first round is like, you got to put that asterisk there. But he is a first rounder from 2020. And he's, been in the league now. He's had cups of coffee the last couple of years, never did anything, was around for this season, not doing anything. Then out of like to me, like absolutely nowhere. These last 5 games just going insane. So obviously, people should be excited about Buchnevich and Robert Thomas if they can still get those guys. But if you can't and you want to get in on this excitement in St. Louis, how high should we be on Jake Neighbors? Can he keep this up?
It's pretty exciting to see Jake Neighbors showing up alongside. For context, the reason why it's exciting is because there was a time, I think it was at the start of this year and at the start of last year, or maybe the end of last year, where there was like some Jake Neighbors hype. And it wasn't like that light. It was like, oh yeah, this could be the year that Jake Neighbors really steps up and makes a difference. He's a first round pick, 26th overall of the Blues back in 2020. He was injured during his first pro season. In his second pro season, he split time between the NHL and the AHL, and wasn't like particularly great in either. Like with the Blues, he was like a fourth liner, so not being given a lot of opportunity. 10 points in 43 games, and like that's nothing to judge him on. And in Springfield, where I assume he's working on his game, plying his trade, he had 16 points in 23 games. This year, Neighbors is now up to 7 goals and 1 assist in 20 games, but 5 of those goals have come in his last 5 games, and those goals have come on 8 shots, which, yes, okay, not sustainable, but a couple things to like about Jake Neighbors. The first is that he's on the top line, top power play last game. It was his first game on the top power play, but hey, you got to start somewhere. He has 2 straight games with 3 shots each, and he has 9 hits over his last 2 games. So all of this is reason to say, hey, maybe I'm not buying fully in on 5 goals in 5 games for Jake Neighbors, but I am interested in perhaps an opportunity that Jake Neighbors is getting that he's never had before. You can see all season long, he started the year around 13, 14 minutes, like middle 6 minutes, and then he went back down to bottom 6 minutes, and now his last 4 games, 11 minutes, 14 minutes, 16 minutes, 17 minutes. So all of this is kind of interesting and exciting. And I'm trying to think, Elon, like what Jake Neighbors' odds are of staying on the top power play. I guess it's up to Jordan Kyrou, right? Or to like that's the spot that's been taken, which is bad news for anyone who has Kyrou, right?
Well, let's take a look at today's game. So
side.
today, they had a game against Chicago. They won. Shen, Buchnevich, Thomas, Neighbors, and Torrey Krug. Oh, so Perunovic, by the way, was quarterback in that top power play the last couple of games. Looks like he was scratched today. And Krug got back there, had a couple of assists. And surprising to see Kyrou bumped. We'll see how long that lasts. I don't think we can really put too much stock into anything that happened for just one game with St. Louis, like against Chicago also. And, Kyrou still had an assist today. He's on a 4-game point streak. I'm not going to be too worried about him. I doubt he's off the top power play for long. Yeah, something to watch. Sometimes we don't have advice. Sometimes we just have to like point something out. I don't know what's going to happen with Jake Neighbors and Kyrou in the Blues, but this is something definitely to watch. Add him to your watch list. St. Louis doesn't have the best schedule next week, but definitely a great spot for as long as he holds it. But Brian, okay, but of course, one last thing from the Fantasy Hockey Robot.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to also mention that Elon, forgive me, and listener, forgive me. I can't remember if we talked about this on the Patron cast or on the last mega show, but like, don't look now, but St. Louis's like has been okay lately, right? Like since like in the month of November. Okay, I'm not going to count the loss on the 1st of November, but in the month of November, a record of 7-4-0 They're outscoring their opponents 41 to 36, and that's with some pretty dismal power play performance too. So I think it also might be thanks to somehow 5 shorthanded goals, and they actually have more shorthanded goals in November, 5, than they do power play goals in St. Louis. So that might be one thing that's helping them out. But still, after a really, really shaky start, I mean, you look at their quality of competition lately, you see some teams that haven't been doing so well. But still, it's great that, we didn't know that St. Louis would be a team that could beat a team that's not doing so well. And while I've been calling for the end of Craig Berube's reign in St. Louis, suddenly they have some wind in their sails. And that's something to continue watching, because if they do, that's good news for, well, everyone on the roster except Jordan Kyrou.
Nah, he'll be fine. He'll be fine,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
he'll be okay.
yeah, the Blues have a good roster. Like, I don't know. I look at the team. Like, I see, like, on paper it should be okay. So it'll be fun to see how things move forward. Okay, let's get to our top headlines of the week. 10 minutes into the show. Number one, of course, Andrei Vasilevsky finally came and played his first game of the year. Didn't seem like he had to work too hard against the Carolina Hurricanes, or it was more like Antti Ranta didn't have to work too hard, yet somehow he still did terribly, because that's the game that Tampa Bay won 8-2, and Ranta led in 8 goals on 14 shots. The worst goalie performance of all time, I think, was like, I was looking at different metrics, people looking at different things. It was like no one's led in that many goals and so few shots before. Antti Ranta had a negative 10.2 in Cupful. But anyways, okay, we're talking about Vasilevsky. We'll get to the Canes a little later. But yeah, Vasilevsky did good. Stopped 22 of 24 for a 917 save percentage. Like, he's Vasilevsky. He's great. Tampa Bay, incredible. Like, they're just like a really strong team. Anyone who thought that maybe them being thin is going to be a problem this year, like Kucherov is like just like insane at this point. He's Kucherov leading the league in points. But yeah, Vasilevsky is back, which means obviously anyone who's still holding on to Jonas Johansson, that's a weird decision for you to have made. At the end of the day, Johansson was, like, I guess, fine. He played 17 games, won 8 of them, 5 overtime losses, 894 save percentage. It started better than it ended for JJ. And yeah, I think he's like at least proven that he's not like the worst goalie of all time, like that Buffalo beat writer said he was. But also, obviously, just forget about him. And like, I'm sure all the Vasilevsky managers are super excited to get him back on the team, and he's going to be, just a big help to you for the rest of the season.
Yeah, exactly. So if you've been holding Vasilevsky and you've been doing well, boy, are you feeling proud of yourself now, because you got off scot-free while Vasilevsky was injured. And if you haven't been doing well, you could hope for some more wins to come your way. If you've been relying on Jonas Johansson, well, I'm sorry for you. And it is time. Like, you're snoozing, even after one Vasilevsky start, after one Vasilevsky IR activation, rostering Johansson. Like, you wouldn't. I just want to really hammer this home for anyone who does have Jonas Johansson, is that you've never held Brian Elliott, right? You've never held him for any length of time, so you're not going to do the same here. I will at least give Jonas Johansson some credit, though. He had regular goalies this season in 5-on-5 Delta Fenwick save percentage, 27th out of 35. He's ahead of Carter Hart, Stuart Skinner, Elvis Merzlikins, Jake Ottinger, Alex Georgiev, Vitek Vanacek, Philip Grubauer, and Philip Gustafsson. And I mean, that's a bit of a sorry group at the bottom there. But Johansson himself, like, only 4 save points below expected, which isn't great, but also not awful. Like, for him, this is good coming into this year. Jonas Johansson's career number was 24 save points below expected in 35 games. So 4 save points, that's nothing. That's peanuts. It's basically it's a career year so far for him, even though he put up a raw 894 and 47% quality starts. But this shows just how valuable Andrei Vasilevsky is, though, right? Like, he came in 944 5-on-5 save percentage compared to Jonas Johansson's 901 on the season so far, which is quite bad. But also his support has not been so great either. So we'll see. Or no, we won't see. But Johansson's done. Vasilevsky's in. That's the end.
Yeah. I mean, there is a back-to-back Monday, Tuesday. So if you really want to hold Johansson for the Arizona game on Tuesday, I'll forgive you for that. And then after that, you're not a good fantasy player if you still have him. But yeah, Tampa Bay, they're going to be pretty good, right? Like, Tampa Bay is in a wild card spot right now. Got to imagine things are going to pick up, especially with this offense. Like we have to mention, obviously, there's nothing you can do about it except for be sad if you drafted like Kirill Kaprizov ahead of Kucherov.
I
Like
feel I feel targeted.
I'm sorry, but yeah, like Kucherov now is up to 12 points in his last 5 games. We're at 35 points in 20 games on the season for a 144-point pace. Who knows if he'll keep this up, but yeah, Kucherov clearly like one of the top players in the league. He was a guy at some points in fantasy was considered like a top 3-ish pick. He's been bumped from like that group for the past couple of years. Maybe now after this season, next season we'll be starting to go back to like, oh, now do you consider Kucherov over a Rantanen, over a Draisaitl even? I don't know. Who knows? Every year,
It's
but he's incredible.
it's crazy. It's crazy that he was ever bumped. Like, I mean, obviously in hindsight, everything's 2020. But I mean, in 18-19, that was Kucherov's like real world beating. Like he was a 100-point player for a couple seasons before that, then 128-point pace in 18-19, then 103, 120, 113-point pace seasons. So I don't know at what point we're like, yeah, Kucherov, and all the while, 3 to 3.5 shots per game. And so I don't really know at what point it was we lost a little bit of faith in Kucherov. And I feel like a true dummy. I hate myself for not having picked Kucherov, especially as a right winger with my first pick in my Cuffle draft, or like, it was 8th or 9th overall. But I had him on the table. I took Kaprizov, and that's hurting. But Kucherov is having like a heck of a season. He's seeing an extra 70 seconds a night at 5-on-5 compared to last year. His shot rates are insane, career highs across the board. His line is clicking like almost never before. He's averaging raw 4.5 shots per game. That's crazy. And of course, a lot like 144 point pace, powered heavily by a near power play point per game pace, 18 power play points in 20 games, 6 of those power play goals. That Tampa power play, we talked last week about a bunch of power plays that were struggling. Tampa is not one of them. They are scoring on a quarter of the shots they take while their top units on the ice. So all this to say, Kucherov currently at 144-point pace. Yeah, okay, he's not going to hold all of it, but he's going to hold a lot of it. I could easily see him holding a 130-point pace the rest of the way. Like he is an Art Ross candidate.
Definitely. Yeah. And you have Braden Point with him, who's like pacing for like 113 now. So fine, maybe he falls to 100. But yeah, it's going to be a good season for anyone who drafted these Tampa players. So, like I said, Kucherov leading the league in points. Second, it's a tie between JT Miller and Quinn Hughes, who are still just like going ham for the Canucks. Someone, though, who is not enjoying all of this success on Vancouver is Andrei Kuzmenko, who was on a cold streak, no points in his last 3 games with only 2 shots. And then he's been healthy scratched for the Canucks last 2 games. A really unfortunate situation for a guy who was at 14 points in 16 games to start the year. It was looking like a great draft pick for anyone who took him. A lot of people were like, he's definitely going to regress. Last year he had a really good season. He had 73 points, but I was like, there's no way he'll keep it up. He had such a high shooting percentage. And then the season started. I was like, well, he was kind of pacing for the same thing again this year. It seemed like, well, maybe, he was going to, make it work. And how could you not, playing on the top line and top power play with Pettersson? But now he's not only been bumped from that line, he's been completely out of the lineup, which is obviously really frustrating if you have him. I guess the question now is, Brian, like the Canucks just lost their last game against was it against did the Canucks really lose to the Sharks? That is well, that's surprising, but I guess that's going to be a reason for that's going to be a wait, so I'll just bring that up again. But now the Canucks lost their last game against San Jose, which is obviously not a good look. So you've got to imagine that Kuzmenko is going to get back into the lineup. You've got to expect that regardless of whatever defensive lapses he has, he's probably a better option for the top line than Sam Lafferty, who was there for the last game with Pettersson and Mikheyev. So I guess the question is, Brian, we've been getting this question also in our Discord, is Kuzmenko a drop at this point? Or is this going to be like a Marchenko situation where he was scratched for a couple games? A lot of people dropped him, and now he's gone off, and he's been incredible. Scored another goal today. So, I think I personally would hold Kuzmenko and see how he responds to these scratches. But I'm curious to know what you think.
I'll hold Kuzmenko, but I'm not going to consider him a must hold. All right. So if he keeps getting scratched, or if he doesn't find his way to come back and hold on the top power play, that's when it's time to let go. And the reason for this is because, well, last year we saw Kuzmenko have a really great season because of the goals he scored, because of his 27% shooting. And we knew Kuzmenko would regress, but we didn't know to where. His underlying numbers, like he didn't shoot a lot, and his expected goals numbers were weak. And so, or not weak, but they weren't great. They weren't that of an elite goal scorer, though. So we were waiting to see if Kuzmenko could somehow hold like a 15 to 20% shooting percentage. And the answer is that he could not. No, he couldn't. So now we see Kuzmenko taking like 1.5 shots per game and shooting 11%. That's not really a recipe for someone you want to hold on to a lot, except for the fact that he plays with some really great players. And if he can stick in great deployment, top line, top power play, then the assists should keep coming. That's the bright side. I mean, the Canucks are shooting 13% with Kuzmenko on the ice at 5-on-5. But part of that is because the Canucks are awesome with Kuzmenko on the ice at 5-on-5. They really are. That line keeps clicking, except I think it's clicking probably like they're not. When I say they've been awesome, like the results have been awesome, but I'm not 100% sure. Like if I compare their goals for rates compared to their expected goals rates for the Canucks while Kuzmenko's on the ice, it's not quite double, but it's not so far off double their actual goals versus their expected goals. And that's not a good sign, plus that 13% shooting. So those goals, I don't really expect to keep coming for Kuzmenko. And those assists, I think should taper off as the Canucks don't score on 13% of their shots with Kuzmenko on the ice the rest of the season. So Elon, what I would hope if I were a Kuzmenko manager is he goes on another little hot run and hot enough that I can sell him as like a 60, 70 point player and get a 60 to 70 point player back. Like just make something lateral happen if you can. And then you don't have to worry anymore about scratches, low shooting, and regressing on ice shooting percentage.
Yeah, I mean, you have to get the other manager to not be worried about that stuff. I think after these healthy scratches, now I'm going to have for the rest of the season this like asterisk beside him. Anytime he's on a hot streak, it's like, but who knows, how long it'll be before he gets scratched. But yeah, definitely something to watch. But let's, if I had him, I would, like I said, I'd hold, kind of see how he bounces back from, sometimes these scratches. I know, Brian, you've always been generally like not a fan, but it seems like some players like seem to respond, or maybe just they would have done well anyways, and it was just bad luck before. Patrick Laine certainly has not responded since his scratch, to my dismay. But anyway, yeah. So that's what's going on in Vancouver, and definitely something we're gonna have to watch and see what happens when. And I think, like I said, I think Kuzmenko is going to come back in the lineup, go back to the top line in the next game after that loss. Brian, next up, I want to go to our next headline, which is a bunch of players on Pittsburgh injured. So we'll get to that in just a sec. You're listening to Keeping Karlsson. Okay, we are back, Brian. It was a revenge game yesterday for Kyle Dubas against his former team, the Leafs, and he got himself the win with a Penguins team that was a little bit hamstrung, right? Rickard Rakell all of a sudden is on long-term IR. I wonder if whatever he went on the IR for is something that's been bothering him all season because he's been terrible. So anyway, whatever we already said that he was like a snoozer and you should drop him. Brian Rust has been out, though I see that the latest is like, the latest on game day news for Brian Rust is like he's out again, but like he's day to day. Like it seems like Brian Rust might be back soon, which is good, like for Pittsburgh, because these lines pretty wild, right? It's been Drew O'Connor, at least in this game against Toronto. Drew O'Connor was playing with Crosby and Gensel. Then Alex Nylander was playing with Malkin and Riley Smith. Alex Nylander also on the top power play in that game. So if I thought that Rust was going to be out a long time, I'd bug you to look into Alex Nylander and say if we should jump on him, but he has no points in 3 games even now with this good deployment, so probably we can just skip him. Actually, I want to ask you about another guy on Pittsburgh, because we had a question about someone typical, like listing a bunch of their players, being like, who should I drop to activate Vasilevsky or whoever from IR? And one guy that it seemed like we need to start considering is Chris Letang, like a bit of a snoozer here, like especially in a more shallow league, like maybe in the cupful. Like he has a 45-point pace right now, right? So that's 11 points in 20 games. It's mostly assists. He only is taking 2.1 shots per game, Letang, when normally he's been above 2.5. So really, even like in the cupful, I don't know how much above replacement he really has been. And yeah, he had an assist in that game versus Toronto, but that was his first point in 3 games. I don't know, with these lower shots, only half point per game. Like, do you see anything I guess my question is, do you see anything in the underlying numbers to indicate that Letang is going to do better than half a point per game? Or now that he's off this top power play, is that what we should expect until there's a deployment change?
Yeah, okay, sorry. Let me take that again. There's nothing in the underlying numbers for Letang that's actually changed at all at 5-on-5 compared to like the past handful of years. He's doing fine at 5-on-5. All right. He's actually doing better at 5-on-5 than last year when there was a little variance working against him. But yeah, Letang is shooting about as much as usual, scoring as much about as usual, pointing as much about as usual, or about as much as usual. But on the power play, like we don't need to dig deep here, Elon. Letang has no power play points this year, zero. Big fat goose egg.
Yeah, and there's no reason to expect them to come if he's not
No,
on that
well,
unit.
there's no reason to expect as many as before to come, but through 20 games, even from the second power play unit, I would be expecting 3 points. All right.
Really? Even
Yeah.
with Pittsburgh, like they load up, they play like 75% of the
Yes.
time on the top power play.
Even from the second, okay, 2 points. Like
Okay.
what? Like that would pace Letang for 8 power play points for the season from the second unit, and like maybe there's the odd shift on the top unit too. Like I would have expected something from him, and that would be enough to bump him up to like a 50 to 55 point pace. So the good news for Letang is that the 5-on-5 production is still there, but of course the shots are down because the power play time is less. Like he used to take a lot more. Like he used to get some of his shots via the power play. He's not doing that this year. And really, I think if you're trying to figure out where Letang falls, the past few years, not counting last year when he did have some bad variance at 5-on-5, he was like a 65, 70 point player with about 20, 25 power play points. So do the math, and he ends up being like a 50-ish point player, 50, 55. And that's where you can find him this year, minus some shots. So, but I hear your point, Elon, which is like Letang is not someone, and I think we knew this on draft day, right? That Letang wasn't going to be the Letang we're used to having. But yeah, I think you still might need to remind yourself as you consider the name and make the differentiation between who Letang was and who he is now.
Yeah, and if like you're rostering Letang and he's like borderline rosterable, and you're just like listening to what Brian said, and like, well, he should have like a couple more power play, but like I don't think I'd be basing my like keeping him on like hoping for those power play 2 points, right?
So
So
I would
yeah,
say you're looking at 2 shots a game and 50 points. Consider if that's worth holding in your roster as a defenseman with no other peripherals, right? You
yeah.
might be able to find someone who's doing more in the blocks and hits and shots column and is like 35 or 40 points, but it's enough, right? Relative to what Letang is actually giving you. It's not a
Mhm.
great stat line.
I'll ask you quickly, Brian. Malkin is cold right now. Only 1 goal and no assists in his last 6 games. I, you're a fan of Malkin. I know. You probably have him on all your fantasy teams. Is this something you're concerned about? Maybe it's just like with all these injuries, it's just going to be harder for him to produce, or is now a good time to like try to sell him, or good time for other people to like be targeting Malkin and trying to find a nervous Malkin manager? What's your take here?
Yeah, I'm still into Malkin. Like he's now at 18 points in 20 games, right? So this cold stretch has bumped him down to a 74 point pace when you were basically hoping for a point per game. And I think we still can. He's still taking, a couple shots a night. That's good. I mean, I wouldn't mind more. But at least there's a solid base there. He hasn't disappeared completely. And Malkin actually, despite being on the top unit, has just 6 power play points in 20 games. So that's one place where I see the chance for some regression to come.
Okay, and then I guess one last thing I'll mention on Pittsburgh is in net. Alex Nedeljkovic was hurt for a while. Magnus Hellberg was the backup, but Nedeljkovic came back and had a huge game, a 38 save shutout against the Vegas Golden Knights. Then Jari came in for a game versus the Penguins, where Jari actually played very well. The Penguins. All right, sorry. And then Jari went back in for a game against the Rangers, and he actually played very well. The Rangers did win the game 1-0, but you can't blame that on Jari. Then Nedeljkovic came in and played the next game, and he didn't do as well. He led in 3 goals on 34 shots, which isn't terrible, 912 save percentage. And then Jari played in that revenge game for Dubas versus Toronto, and got the win. So at this point, it's not as if Jari is like losing the job to Nedeljkovic. Like he's been fine, but at the same time, Nedeljkovic is sitting now. He's only played 4 games. He has a 937 save percentage. Obviously, a lot of that is because of that one great 38 save shutout. But yeah, is this the kind of thing where you'd be a little bit nervous that maybe they're going to start coming close to a split since Ned has been pretty good himself? Or do you think that, because going into the season, I think we thought of Jari as like, he's probably the volume starter Like if Pittsburgh wants to have a chance at this thing, they're not going to play Nedeljkovic. But now that we're seeing that Nedeljkovic is actually good, I wonder if you have to worry that this could turn into like a, Vejmelka situation or something close to it.
Yeah, except Jari isn't playing badly like Vejmelka is. Jari's actually had a really good season.
Okay,
One of
so
his
a Connor
one of his
Ingram.
best.
Sorry, flip
I
it.
mean, you're saying Jari is Ingram?
Okay, I'm gonna do a new team. Is this a Sorokin situation where he's losing starts to Varlamov and now he's not the volume guy we expected him to be?
Jari's been better than Sorokin. Like I think the difference is that again, I get the point. I get what you're saying, right? You're saying, hey, we have a volume guy, and all of a sudden maybe he's not. But in the other circumstances, the volume guy has been being like handily outplayed by his backup. And Elon, I know you traded Jari, and maybe the cognitive dissonance is just too much to bear for you. But Jari is still having a great season, 60% quality starts, 918 save percentage, a fantastic number above his expected save percentage and Fenwick save percentage at 5-on-5. This is like a very good season for Tristan Jarry, and uncharacteristically very good season for Tristan Jarry. Now, Nedeljkovic, yes, is also doing well in a couple games that he's played. Does this mean that the Penguins have an opportunity to actually rest Jarry and give him some time off a little more often than they have in the past? Yeah, for sure. Like Jarry started what, like 8 of the first 10 games for Pittsburgh, so 4 of 5. So does that maybe change to 3 of 4 if Nedeljkovic proves that he can actually handle a regular start? Possibly, but I don't think Jarry's really in danger of becoming like a split starter because he's been playing well with a heavy workload already.
Okay, I'm with you. And it's not cognitive dissonance, Brian. I'm a journalist. Like I've said, I got to ask the questions that people might be wondering about. I traded Jari for Nichushkin, who scores every single game. So I'm not regretting that deal. I think maybe it's a win-win. And who knows? Maybe if Nedeljkovic plays more, Jari's not the volume guy we thought he was. But you're saying you're not concerned about that. Next up, I wanted to go back to Florida. We talked about them last week where Montour and Ekblad had both returned, but we only had like one game. It wasn't enough data. So now that we have a week of data, let's take a look at what's going on with the defense in Florida and like the power play in general and lots of things in general. Let's really dive in. Let's sit down, get comfortable, and talk some Florida Panthers here. So Brandon Montour now has played 4 games and has 0 points. Okay, he's on the top power play. He's been on the top power play the whole time. So far, nothing to show for it. Aaron Ekblad has played 4 games, 0 points. So far, the returns haven't been great for people who drafted these Florida defensemen and stashed them in IR, getting excited, seeing that we're going to come back early, like thinking that this is a huge win for them. So far, not great. So obviously, the big question to start this all off. Oh, I'll mention the top power play in the last game: Barkov, Bennett, which is nice. We'll talk about Bennett, who's also been doing nothing, by the way. But it's nice to see him on the top power play. Reinhart, Matthew Tkachuk, of course, and then Brandon Montour. So with that being the situation, the obvious question, like, should people who have Montour and Ekblad be very nervous, or is this like a clear just bad luck? Be happy, try to buy them if other people have these defense. And obviously they're 2 separate people, so you'll have 2 separate answers. But yeah, obviously not the start we expected from Montour and Ekblad.
No, but I'm gonna give them the Sam Bennett sort of grace period where like you're coming into the season, you're returning from an injury, and even more, they need more than the Sam Bennett grace period. Like these guys have been off for a very long time, right? Their rehab was long, lengthy. They're joining a league in full swing while figuring out how to play with, whatever changes exist or don't exist in their bodies, but getting comfortable again. So, Elon, I know you were excited to say, well, we have 4 games of data now instead of 1. And it's true, but it's still not enough for me to really want to dig in and be like, oh, no, we need to be worried about these guys. I want to see another week or 2. And hey, if we're still seeing problems then absolutely, let's take a look. But it's too early to push the panic button on Montour and Ekblad.
All right, I'm going to push us to next week. We're going to talk again about Montour and Ekblad next week and see what's going on. Sam Bennett, Brian, do we have enough data now to make a determination on this guy? He's played 8 games now, just a single sad goal, and it was an empty net goal. Like I said, the one positive is in the last game, he finally got on the top power play, which you'd think should be good, though Florida got shut out 3-0. They clearly did not score a power play goal. So I wonder if they go back to the drawing board for the next matchup. Definitely hasn't been the return that I and anyone who drafted Sam Bennett were expecting. All these people who drafted Florida player. That man's first round. And you know what? And maybe as part of the Sam Bennett talk, I think we need to talk about Matthew Tkachuk a little bit here because we had a question on Twitter being like, why haven't we talked about Matthew Tkachuk yet? Who's maybe one of the biggest first round busts so far for fantasy? Like, a guy who was being taken even like early first round in a lot of leagues. We're now sitting at 17 points in 20 games for Tkachuk as he's now pointless in 5. So he had a good start, but has everything's turned off. The shots have still been coming, but no points. And so, yeah, I guess obviously Tkachuk is like not the kind of guy we are like going to recommend dropping or anything crazy like that. But is, when I look at like a Sam Bennett, I'm like, well, but he's on the line with Tkachuk. Like that's still worth holding. Like how valuable is that? Is this like a first round caliber Matthew Tkachuk, or maybe was last season a bit of an aberration? Like what's your current take on what we've seen from Matthew Tkachuk so far? And then I guess how that helps or hurts Sam Bennett.
Okay, I was actually going to go Bennett first. Can I? I'm gonna. Sorry, I'm gonna twist
Look,
your
Ryan, you do whatever
question.
you want. Yeah.
Yeah, the one thing I want to point out about Sam Bennett is in 130 minutes, about 100 of those are 5-on-5 and about 20 on the power play. Sam Bennett has been on the ice for precisely one goal. One goal. That's all
The
he's
empty
been on
net
the ice
goal.
for. What's that?
Was that the empty net goal?
Yeah, it was. And he
Okay.
scored it. That's it. That's the
Yay.
only. So Sam Bennett has not been on the ice for a power play goal. He's not been on the ice for a 5-on-5 goal or a true power. Like this is, uh, for context, you can multiply by 10 the ice time that Bennett has had so far. And you'll get the number, the number of minutes he had a couple years back. He was on the ice for 86 goals. All right. So right now he's on pace to be on the ice for 10 goals. And I don't think that's going to hold. All right. So that's why I'm saying hold on. Sam Bennett
Interesting.
is painful. Yeah.
Like
Interesting.
just because like you would think part of it might be if he's not playing as well, then they would score fewer goals. Because if I was on the ice, I think the Panthers would also score fewer goals than they would if someone better was on. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, I don't think the drop in the quality of Sam Bennett's play has gone from Sam Bennett to Elon Dabrowski. And the expected goals rates like bear that out too. Like, yeah, they're not as high as they have been in previous years, and the same will actually can say for Kachuk. But I also don't know. They're still good. Like they're still Sam Bennett's Florida numbers versus Sam Bennett's Calgary numbers.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, so this is why I'm still optimistic, and I think you know what, maybe I'll see who the Bennett manager in my division is and see if I can pull a little buy low. And like
Okay.
I've been burned. I've been burned by this before, but I really am hopeful. But a lot has been in flux with the Panthers. Like they've been trying out some new line combos through the season. They've had Ekblad and Montour missing, which yes impacts the power play, but also impacts the breakout, right? It impacts the system. And so I wonder how much of an impact that's had on all the Panthers, including Matthew Tkachuk, who, is on just a 70-point pace. Just after breaking out, well, not breaking out, but having an incredible season, right? Where we all thought he was indispensable with a 113-point pace over 79 games last season. This season, Tkachuk is he's about to fall short of that pace by 40 points at this particular moment, and a lot of that is because the 5-on-5 production has dropped. But I'm going to go back to the factors that I named for Sam Bennett, which are like a lot of changes, a couple key key back end puck movers missing, and also on top of that, like I'm giving Tkachuk some grace. His on ice shooting percentage is less than 6%. His own shooting percentage is about half what it usually is. Like maybe if you're being generous, maybe it's more like 2/3, but it was half not long ago. And then it's been bad. All right. But the shots are still coming. He's still averaging over 4 shots per night. The power play production, thankfully, that's somewhat still there, but it could be more there. And I think the return of Montour should help that. So I what I'm seeing with Bennett and Ekblad and Montour coming back, what I'm hoping to see here is a return to the conditions under which Tkachuk thrived last season. And I'm seeing him shooting 3.5% in all situations. Like I named his 5-on-5 shooting percentage before. Last season, he shot 12%. So that speaks like he has yet to even score a power play goal when he had 14 last season. So these are all the reasons why I'm still feeling like Matthew Tkachuk has more than the 70-point pace in him. And I would like someone can test me on that. Like I have Kaprizov. I would I don't know if the manager in my division wanted to try and get Kaprizov from me, who's pacing for 8 points more than Kachuk right now. I'd take that deal straight up.
All right, so there you go. You've heard it here first. Brian has put the offer out. Yeah, sounds like you're saying it's a great opportunity to potentially buy low on Matthew Kachuk. We had a question on our Discord. I'm seeing now actually right here in the chat. Was it the same person, Matthew, that asked this? I'm not sure, but should people consider trading Philip Forsberg for Matthew Kachuk? That was a comparison. It was asked on our Discord. Brian had a really funny answer. You should check it out. It was like at first just like not even close. Obviously, you want Kachuk. And then he started, I guess, looking into numbers more like, well, okay, maybe that wasn't fair. Okay, yeah, Forsberg's been so much better. Okay, yeah. But like, yeah, so just for context here, Philip Forsberg is having like an incredible season. I really hope that he's going to keep that up today and help me win my matchup here. But yeah, going into today, we're looking at 24 points in 19 games. He's on a great run, 12 points in his last 7. So it's been incredible for Forsberg. And like we've said, Kachuk not as good, though Brian is pointing to some variance. So yeah, how do you compare a couple guys like that? And I guess the real question is, if you have Philip Forsberg right now, should I be sent? Brian, I have Forsberg. Should I be sending out a trade offer? I don't have Kaprizov. You have Forsberg, actually, don't you?
I
So
do.
maybe if the Kachuk manager doesn't want Kaprizov, but they want Forsberg, would you do that deal?
Yeah, I think I'd still, you know what? Yeah. Well, Kaprizov also has room to regress, right? So I just got to say, like before I make any warranties with the Kachuk manager in my league, I'm gonna dig a little bit more into it if I do get the offer. But Philip Forsberg right now is pacing for 98 points, and this is the most legitimately he's ever looked pacing for 100 points. He did pace for 100 points back in 21-22. But that was on the heels of a 19% shooting percentage when he basically had a career number closer to like 12%. And that explained a lot of the difference between his 100-point pace and his usual 70. But this season, Forsberg is shooting like never before, over 4 shots per game for Philip Forsberg, right? Sorry.
Nice.
And yeah, it wasn't that anyway.
I just said nice to be nice.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate you being nice. He's doing really well. And there's not a whole lot to pick apart from Forsberg's game. His 5-on-5 production is up. His shot rates are up, as I mentioned. His expected goals are up. There's a lot to like about what's going on with Philip Forsberg on the ice. And his line is performing like there's been a lot of change around him, right? But his line is performing better than any line of his has performed for a long time. Also on the power play, a lot of Forsberg's production seems sustainable. So, well, I have been pretty adamant over the years that Forsberg is a 70-point player through and through with upside for more, but I'd given up on expecting that now that he's 29 years old. Here we are. Philip Forsberg seems to maybe be finally reaching that upside. And I think 100 points is very possible. So would I trade him for Matthew Tkachuk? Well, I'd be trading 100 points for 100 points, or maybe Kachuk's upside is higher than Forsberg's. One myth to bust that I actually had to bust for myself when initially looking this up was that Matthew Tkachuk in Florida has stopped hitting, or stopped hitting as much as he was known for hitting in Calgary. And last year it was like, yeah, okay, Kachuk's hitting is down. It's first year in Florida. We'll see if it comes back. The update so far is that the hitting has not come back. He's, instead of having 2 to 3 hits a game, as he did in most years in Calgary, he is now hitting about once per game. Forsberg actually hits more than that. So depending on your categories, listen, I think they both look like 100-point players. I think Kachuk has the better upside. They're both shooting about the same amount. I think Forsberg hits a little more. So it's a lot closer than I gave credit for when the question was first asked. I think I would still prefer Kachuk for the upside. And also just because we haven't seen Forsberg do this over a whole season before. So maybe that's my one reason to disbelieve that he can keep up the 100-point pace, but I really don't disbelieve it at all. So it's a lot closer than we'd say. Elon, give me Kachuk, but Kachuk by a hair. And if hits are worth like a lot, then I would still I'd prefer Forsberg.
Interesting. Okay, yeah. I guess another thing to keep in mind is that Forsberg hasn't played like 80 plus games in a long, long time. Maybe this is the year where he's just fully healthy all the way through, but maybe you're also you'd never know, like with injuries, but seems like maybe your odds are better of getting a full season out of Kachuk than Forsberg. But anything could happen. Brian, so I still want to talk about some things with Nashville since we're talking about Philip Forsberg. So we'll get to them and then the rest of our headlines here. We still have some big ones, and we'll get to it all. You know when? Soon. Okay. We'll be back in a second. Just gonna keep it Karlsson. We are back, Brian. Yeah, since we're on Nashville, talking about Philip Forsberg, I do want to give, I guess, myself a little bit of credit from Matchup Maximizer last week. And I think we also mentioned it on the show that we talked about how Gustav Nyquist had found himself on the top line and top power play with the aforementioned Philip Forsberg. Nyquist looking really good. Like he's now up to 9 points in his last 8 games. And with this deployment, I don't know why you would expect, like, obviously he's not point per game, right? He's Gustav Nyquist, but like, if we're thinking that Forsberg is a 100-point guy, then you probably want someone playing with him at all strengths. You could expect the guy to maybe, like, I don't know, 60-point guy. Like, so obviously depends on your format. I don't think this is like a keep forever, but I would definitely be taking a close look at Gustav Nyquist if he's out there as a great third wheel with Forsberg and Ryan O'Reilly, who's not shop liver. Ryan O'Reilly is also doing really well, but he's probably already rostered in a lot of leagues. Also, I'll mention quickly Luke Evangelista had himself a really big game after getting scratched by another example of one of these players, and we'll see if Kuzmenko can do it, right? We had Evangelista get scratched and then came back with, what was it, a hat trick or like a 3-point game? It was great. So I don't know. Maybe this, Brian, have you changed your opinion at all about this coaching strategy now that we've seen some examples like Marchenko and now Evangelista? You get scratched, then you come back, have a big game. Is there something to it? Maybe for fantasy, should we be targeting guys who've been healthy scratched that, obviously not like a fourth liner, but like a guy that it's rare that it happens?
No, I don't know. It feels like I know you have to ask the question. I'm actually more curious to your answer to this because, like, yeah, I'm not a fan of healthy scratches. Like, I think a good coach will like use other ways to motivate and teach rather than, but some players like Luke Evangelista is 21 years old. So like there's a lot of career ahead of him, and like taking a break to watch from the press box doesn't seem like an awful idea, right? Especially if he's going to come back and get better deployment than he had before, which happened in his second game back. But yeah, 2 5-shot games in a row, including the 3-point night at St. Louis. That's nice. That's nice, Elon. I don't know if it's like scratch motivated, but it's definitely put Evangelista back on at least my watch list as someone to stream in when I can fit in a pred. He's also like, I'm desperate for right wings, and he's one of them. So I'm also like, oh, if I do add Luke Evangelista and he actually is worth holding, that would be huge for me. But I don't know that he's quite there yet, but it is encouraging. And I'm curious to see what he does tonight against Winnipeg. If he puts up another like 4 or 5 shots, that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it'll be fun to watch. We're done one period so far in this critical game for my matchup. Anyways, let's see what Evangelista, no shots after 1 period. We'll see what happens in period 2. I'll just mention quickly on Nashville. This is only for keeper league. I know when I mention his name like way too much, so he doesn't deserve to be mentioned so often. But Kevin Lankinen is having a good season so far. I'm just gonna say he's had 3 really great games in a row now. He doesn't play a lot. Like he's obviously not worth more than just a stream. But if you're in like a dynasty league, his contract's gonna end at the end of this year. I just have a hunch. Okay, Brian. Sorry. It's very distracting because I know you're not paying attention because you're writing like a novel in the chat. So it's like, I'll just wait for you to finish and then, or do you want to just like say what you want to say?
I was listening. You were talking about Kevin Lankinen. His contract's up.
I know. Well, okay, don't be like how I am when Dina's like, you're not paying attention to me or on your phone. Like, I could see that you're chatting. So
I'm doing both.
I know. So I'll just wait till you're done and then I'll continue just because I'm distracting.
I'm sorry.
Okay, anyway, I don't apologize. Just I'll wait. I don't mind. Or you could just say your answer to Schwab. Schwab Squab is wanting to make this trade.
I gave my answer. It scares me when someone is like, all right, you said it, I'm doing it. Cause like, man, I just feel responsible.
It's a lot of pressure. Well, yeah.
Do you know that Hockey Reference has nicknames posted under, like, I've actually never noticed this before, but Kevin Lankinen, under his name in bold, it says bracket Lanky.
Okay. Well, you can use that when so I'll start the section over again. You could reference Lanky.
You were crushing it. I'm sorry that I'm sorry.
Yeah. No apologies. Just yeah, a little distracted. Okay. Yeah, one last guy I'll just mention on Nashville. I know I like talk about him too much, but I just have a hunch about Kevin Lankinen. Okay, he hasn't played a lot this year, kind of similar to Nedeljkovic so far, but he's had a pretty good season so far. In 5 games, we're up to a 913 save percentage. 3 really good starts recently. Obviously, like in a 1 year league, Lankinen's not going to be getting a lot of games versus Saros, but his contract's up at the end of the year. I just have a hunch. If you're in a dynasty league, just like I think Lankinen's going to finally get a chance. And I think that this isn't like the Lankinen who kind of blew people up when he was in Chicago. He's only 28 years old. I think there's something here. I think there's a goalie that can be a good NHL goalie, maybe like a 50-50 goalie on a team. So I don't know. Just saying. In a dynasty league, that's where it's hard to find goalies. I'd be excited to like sort of grab Lankinen for the future. Just saying. Just saying.
I'm not. It sounds like you think I'm going to come down hard on you for this, but I'm not. Lankinen has had like a pretty half decent career. Like he did have a terrible age 26 season with Chicago in 2021-22 when he had an 891 save percentage and just 41% quality starts. But that actually stands out as the one in now, well, I'll count this as his 4th season, even though we've only seen 5 appearances from him. But that's just 1 in 4 seasons that Lankinen has actually looked not great. The other 3, he's looked pretty good, including his rookie season when he was also getting shelled in Chicago and held up pretty well. Last season in Nashville with 19 games, 916, 60% quality starts, and 8 save points above his expected Fenwick save percentage at 5-on-5. So yeah, Elon, I'm as Hockey Reference notes, his nickname is Lanky. And I'm with Lanky. I'm with you on Lanky that there might be some upside here. And honestly, if the Sens hadn't committed so deep to Korpisalo, I would hope that maybe they would give Lankinen a chance. He's going to be 29 next year, but there's not a lot of mileage, or at least NHL mileage on Lankinen. And I would be very curious to know what he could do with a little more time.
Yeah, get out your hanky when your team's playing Lanky because you're going to cry because he's going to play well.
Tears
Okay.
of joy.
Oh, cheers of joy, sure. Okay, next up, we got back to the headlines. Okay, Nico Hischier's back. Hey, that's exciting. If you have Nico Hischier, big player who we were expecting really big things from this season after like a real breakout last year where he had 80 points. So far in his like 7 games before getting hurt, he only had 5. So far in his 7 games before getting hurt, Hischier wasn't having a great season, only 2 goals in those 7 games, but he came back in this game against Buffalo and he came out flying. 1 goal, 1 assist on a couple shots, couple hits. New Jersey destroyed the Sabres 7-2, which was a much needed win for the team because they were on a 3-game losing streak and had only won 1 of their last 7 games going into that win over Buffalo. So it is kind of weird what's going on in New Jersey. Obviously, they've had Hischier injured. They've had Timo Meier injured. So maybe just Hischier being back is going to improve their fortunes overall. But yeah, Hischier obviously I think we could all agree is better than the 2 goals in 7 games he had before. We actually had an interesting question on our Discord, so I figured I'd bring it up here. Brian, we had a question from Ryan9139 asking if I think it was he has Nichushkin and wondering if he should trade for Hischier. Or maybe it was the other way around, but Valeri Nichushkin, like we've talked about before, has been just been crushing it ever since Lehkonen got injured and he's gotten on the top line and top power play with McKinnon and Rantanen. Nichushkin is on a streak now of 11 points in his last 7 games, scores almost every game. So this would be kind of like a Forsberg for Tkachuk situation, trading a guy who's like just red hot for someone who's cold right now, but obviously would have been drafted a lot higher. What's your take right now on Hischier and how he compares to Nichushkin? And would you pull the trigger on that one? Right wing for Nichushkin. I know you like that.
Yeah, that's definitely a positive if you're looking for positional eligibility. Last year, Hischier was a point per game player, and I could see him coming into the season. I figured he could continue that, especially if he continues taking 3 shots per game as he did last season. This season in limited action, he hasn't done that, but we don't know if he was hurting a little before going on the shelf or, exactly what the deal was and why he wasn't, he had a couple games with no shots, which is kind of uncharacteristic compared to the Hischier that we'd seen last season. So this season, I don't know, Elon, I think I would want Hischier because he's the more certain point per game player, but I wouldn't at all begrudge you for going Nichushkin, who has been great. I think the drawback from Nichushkin is that when Artturi Lehkonen returns, which, might still not be a while, but when Lehkonen does come back, I'm not sure what that does to Nichushkin, but you can make that a problem for future you if you want. And then I think you'll be just fine in the interim having Nichushkin over Hischier, probably seeing similar production, but getting it from a better positional eligibility spot on your roster.
Yeah. And for what it's worth, like Shams is pointing out, he retweeted earlier on GameDayTweets.com. Lehkonen is now out of the neck brace, but there's like no timeline yet. I will mention Colorado has won 6 of their last 7 games, and if you recall, they were struggling a bit before. So maybe that's just me being delusional as someone who has Nichushkin, but like makes me think that maybe this is working and they won't like Nichushkin's scoring goals every game. That line is clicking. Like you would think that you would just kind of keep it together, but obviously who knows? Like we'll see what
You
they
heard
do.
it. Jari entering a pure timeshare and Nichushkin an Art Ross candidate.
I guess so, sure. Next headline. I mean, now we're getting to like just these aren't huge headlines, but Taylor Hall is out for the season, which sucks. But he was already not someone that we were considering fantasy relevant anymore. He had already lost out on his top line deployment. Maybe it had to do with the fact that he was like hurt the whole time, like not 100%. Who knows? But anyways, we're done with Taylor Hall. Don't have to talk about him anymore. In the meantime, Philip Kurashev has taken I don't know, one of the spots that maybe he hasn't, maybe he's not on the left side, maybe he's been the right wing. Maybe Lucas Reichel has been the left wing, but those have been the two guys playing with Bedard. Kurashev doing everything we were hoping that Taylor Hall would do this season and more. And yes, I'm talking about Philip Kurashev, who is now up to 12 points in 13 games. Didn't get a point today against St. Louis, but before that was on a great streak of 6 points in 6 games. So Kurashev, I think at this point, I don't know, Brian. Are we talking like must own? Like go grab him. He's on the top line, top power play. Chicago plays 4 times next week. Like how high should we be on Kurashev, who's on a hot streak, and in the spot that we all drafted Taylor Hall too high in a month or so back?
Yeah. So in my heart, like I'm looking at Kurashev's numbers and he's doing great alongside Bedard, right? He's now on a 76-point pace. I'm getting like Artem Anisimov vibes from him, like maybe because it's the jersey and because he's playing with one of the best players in the league and was previously like nothing to sneeze at. But like I said, my heart is saying all the indicators are, yeah, Kurashev like could be worth rostering the rest of the season. My head though is saying that I don't quite think that's the case. It doesn't take a whole lot of shots. That like that, I don't know. I don't know. Is that it? Is that like I'm really trying to make sense of this because I look at the underlying numbers and I don't see 76 points. In fact, like the on ice scoring for Kurashev, like they're scoring on 12.5% Chicago of their shots with Kurashev on the ice. And remember, who was I talking about? Whose actual goals for was double the expected number earlier in the show. I'm seeing the same thing. Sorry. I'm seeing the same thing for Kurashev, but I also like I will keep my mind open to the possibility that there's something like Bedardy about these numbers that isn't quite being captured. Like I'm open to there being some other factor that I can't see supporting Kurashev's ability to keep this pace up the rest of the season, but I don't really see it, and I don't see a lot of shots. I know he's upped his shots lately. He had the 7-shot game against Columbus, and then has followed that up with 1 and 3 shots in his last 2 games against Toronto and St. Louis, respectively. He's 24 years old, so we haven't seen like his best, but I also just don't. I'm not a believer. All right, I guess is what it's coming down to. Even though I don't have like I can see a lot of reasons that we'd want to believe like instinctively and be open to the possibility. So I'm going to remain open to the possibility. And yeah, I would go and get Kurashev if I could in my leagues, especially in like a cupful size league. Like I'll go and I'll roster him for as long as this goes until it peters out, which like I said, I think it will, but I'll still grab him. Elon, I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to toss one back at you. If you wanted to roster one the rest of the season between Kurashev and Kuzmenko, who would you choose?
Ooh, well, that's a tough one. That's a good one. I mean, I think I'm gonna say Kuzmenko. I'm like, obviously, that's like a lot up to Rick Tocchet to determine if that ends up being the right decision or not for me. But if it's top line, top power play Kuzmenko, then I think I'll take him. Just because I think that I don't know, it's tough because I'm saying like I think Kurashev could get bumped. That's a really good one. That could really go either way, Brian. Tricky. I'll just say like go get Kurashev right now, like you said, if he's in free agency, and then maybe we'll see. But yeah, this will be a big week.
Would you drop Kuzmenko for Kurashev?
No, I'm saying no. I'm saying I take Kuzmenko over Khrushchev at this point.
Okay. But
But yeah.
you'd roster them both and then see who has the most staying power, and you think
Oh yeah.
they have a roughly even chance of being rewarding on your roster the rest of the way.
Yeah. I mean, my answer is Kuzmenko. I prefer Kuzmenko. So I'm not like being wishy-washy, but like I could see it
Okay.
going either way, but like that's my answer, I guess. Here's a question. I asked you before about Chris Letang. Is he a snoozer? We had another defenseman bumped from the top power play in Seth Jones. It's been Kevin Korchinski on the top power play now in Chicago. And Korchinski did score an overtime goal a couple games back against the Leafs, which was very exciting. Poor Leafs couldn't pull it up, but, and then the Leafs lost to Pittsburgh also. Not a fun time to be a Leaf fan, I guess. But Korchinski followed that up today with no points, but 4 shots against the Blues. Seth Jones, on the meantime, is now pointless in 4 games, has lost the top power play, at least for now. This is like 7 points in 19 games overall. We're losing reasons to hold on to Seth Jones. He's also like hitting so much. He gets like 1 hit a game. He's had a bunch of like today. He had only 1 hit and 0 blocks, but he did have 5 shots. So he made up for it there. But that doesn't happen too often. I don't know. Like, what do we do here? Do we tell people that it's time to drop Seth Jones if he's off that top power play? Do you wait to see if that will actually last? Because he's definitely been. If Letang, I'm saying, is like borderline replacement level so far, Seth Jones has been below replacement level so far.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember, there was a moment at last season where Seth Jones had been bad, and I stumped for him, and I'm like, look, the tide is gonna turn. Like Seth Jones, like everything says he deserves better. And then like he scored in the next game. I don't know if you remember this. And like, quote
Brilliant.
unquote, like, yeah, it felt really good. He actually, I think he went on like a 3 game goal scoring run or something. Um, and then nothing. So I like honestly, this is what I think from Seth. Like, I don't see much value in Seth Jones. I kind of wanted them this year to see what would happen with Bedard around, but I'm seeing Chicago still struggling quite mightily. Like they are like look up and down their roster, their depth chart. It's Connor Bedard. That's it. Not even Taylor Hall for whatever he might be worth. There's just not a lot going on there, and one Connor Bedard can't carry a whole team to being rosterable or fantasy relevant. So yeah, I think you can feel pretty reasonably good about dropping Seth Jones. You can take a chance at Kevin Korchinski, but I think he's going to run into the same problem that Seth Jones has had, which is that there's nobody except Connor Bedard, who, by the way, just humming along, 73-point pace. The one thing I can't, like as much as I'll rue my Kaprizov over Kucherov pick, I don't know if you remember Elon, but I picked Philip Forsberg over Bedard, and I felt bad about it. Like, oh, like I'm no fun. Like I'm gonna take 70 points from Forsberg over like, and I thought Bedard was the one who had a better chance of reaching his upside than Forsberg this season. And at least I can hang my hat on that one. I feel all right about it. But Connor Bedard's still having a great season, but I really don't expect, as I said about Khrushchev, I'll say the same with Jones and Korchinski. You might see like little rays of hope, but I don't see anything that's really going to sustain itself into being someone who's rosterable.
Yeah, like Seth Jones when he was struggling at least on the top power play, I was like, well, okay. I mean, there's always a chance he'll get a power play point here and there, but like now he's not even on the top power play. Like, why are you holding him? And he could get it back, but I don't know if you necessarily need to wait. If you're going to be dropping Seth Jones and you're in a Bangers League, one guy to consider as our last headline here before we end part one: Rasmus Ristolainen is back for Philly. He's only played 1 game. It was against the Islanders, and Philly shut out the Islanders 1-0. So, not too many goals to go around, but Rasmus Ristolainen took 3 shots, had 3 hits, had a couple blocks. So I don't know how many points this guy's going to get. He did have a strong end to last season after doing nothing offensively for the first 3 quarters of the year. I think Tortorella likes him. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I don't think that he's like, going to get on the top power play or anything, but, in a Bangers League, maybe you take a look at Ristolainen. And then I guess really quickly, just checking in on Travis Sanheim, who was like our darling to start. He's on a bit of a cold streak all of a sudden, pointless in his last 4. Still top power play. I personally would still hold Sanheim and be happy to do so. Maybe try to buy low if you can get him. Like I like him, but I'm curious to know, Brian, are you like jumping off the Sanheim train, or are you just thinking also that this is just like a little bit of a cold stretch?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a cold stretch, and I also think we can't expect Sanheim to have kept up the production. Like he was almost point per game heading into this cold snap, and obviously that was a little bit much to expect. And while I wouldn't expect him to go pointless in 4 and then score and then go pointless in 4 again through the rest of the season. I think he's someone who might point in 2 out of 4 games or 2 out of 3 games. He's not going to be someone who's helping you as much as he has to date. But like you said, Elon's still on the top power play. Had a 4-shot game against New York a couple games back, so that's a reason to hold on. So no, I'm not swapping Sanheim out so long as he's on that top power play. Even though he has just 4 power play points in 21 games, I would want more from a power play quarterback, but it's something, and it's more than any other Flyers defenseman is getting, and probably more than most other defensemen on your wire are getting you too. As for Rasmus Ristolainen, he's he'll maybe fill some categories for you. He played less than 18 minutes in his first game back. Last season, he averaged 19 minutes a night. So maybe he'll see more time. We'll see just how much more time he'll get. A couple seasons ago, he averaged almost 22 minutes a night. And in Buffalo, he was seeing like 25, even 27 minutes a night some seasons. So we'll see exactly what his usage is now that he's back. Once he's played a few games and gotten knocked the rust off. But if you're looking for points, yeah, you're looking at like 20-point pace. But if you're adding Ristolainen, it's for his peripherals, and it's good for you to know though that those peripherals are back on the table now that he's in the lineup. And you want, if you're looking for them, you want to keep an eye on that ice time because 20 minutes or more would be ideal.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Brian, this has been a blast. We still have a lot to get to, so it's going to be a fun second hour of the show. But now's a good time to take a quick break. Hopefully, everyone's enjoying the show so far. If you want to get more, all you have to do is subscribe. Just kidding. You don't have to do anything. Oh, no. If you want to get more, all you have to do is sign up for Keeping Karlsson Plus, and you'll be just kidding. The show's already downloaded. It's free. Just subscribe to Keeping Karlsson on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your stuff. And that episode should be waiting for you. And Brian, let's take a quick break and we'll get back to it soon. So see you all on the other side. The time is 9:14 p.m. Sunday, November 26th. I mentioned before that I really need Philip Forsberg to outscore Kyle Connor tonight. Preds up 2-0. Nothing from Forsberg. We'll see how this goes. But Brian and I have a lot to talk about as we get into the second half of this mega episode. And Brian, we're at the part of the show that I think you're excited about at the start. It's the Brian's good predictions that have come true. So I want to give you some kudos for some good takes recently. And I want to start, but at the same time, I want to give you the opportunity to potentially say that maybe you were right, but for the wrong reasons. Or, obviously you're going to now reassess and see if you still believe in these takes. But so far they are looking pretty good. I want to start with the last episode. Maybe I badgered you quite a bit about William Karlsson just because you were saying like whatever. And I was like, yeah, but he's on the top power play now. Oh, he has a lot of shots now. And you were like, I think that's me summarizing your answer to my badgering. But maybe you were right, because since that last show, it's been a pointless week for Wild Bill over in Vegas. I will say, in his defense, Vegas got shut out by Arizona. They only scored a couple goals versus Dallas, and they got shut out by Pittsburgh. Like, it hasn't been like all of a sudden Vegas just has stopped scoring goals. So I just am curious if is this just like a Vegas is cold situation, or is this like William Karlsson is cooling off situation? How do you see this more? And also, I guess, before I throw to you, we've had a lot of questions all of a sudden about Pietrangelo and what to do about this guy's cold streak. And again, it's like, obviously he's not going to be able to bounce back if Vegas isn't scoring any goals, but we're now pointless in 6 for Alex Pietrangelo. It's been a really rough cold stretch, and obviously he's not on the top power play. It's been Theodore for the majority of the season. So yeah, what are your takes on William Karlsson and Alex Pietrangelo on this ice cold Vegas team?
Okay, let's start with William Karlsson, who, like, since that series of 4 goal, like the strong shooting, he had 9 4-and-4 shots when we recorded last week. He followed that up with another 4-shot game and then a 1-shot game against Arizona when Vegas was shut out by the mighty Connor Ingram. Even that didn't win me my week this week. Yeah, Elon, like I'm trying to figure out what to make of William Karlsson. Like, I'm definitely not going to take a victory lap quite yet. I will mention that so Karlsson jumped onto the top power play unit on November 8th in a game against LA. The Vegas power play had been doing like pretty well to date. And since Karlsson has been up on the top unit, they had one good game where they went 3 for 7 against the Habs. But outside of that, they are 2 for 20. And that's it on the power play. So I'm not sure William Karlsson on the power play is working and whether or not they change anything. I mean, nothing's working for Vegas, as you mentioned, just 2 goals in their last 3. Those 2 goals were against Dallas, and they won that game. And they were shut out in the other 2, as you mentioned. So William Karlsson, I think, Elon, I'm still like the jury's still out. I want to see if he can stay on the power play long enough for it to succeed, and if he can continue shooting. And I think those 2 things might be related. So I'm okay. Yeah, how about you just jump in there?
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to say I was going to jump in before you start talking about Petrangelo.
Yeah,
But
that's your
okay.
moment. Yeah.
Okay, and then Brian, actually, before you get to your answer about Alex Petrangelo, I'm realizing that I didn't catch that Shea Theodore's injured. He didn't play the last game. He had an upper body injury. Patty's saying in the chat here that he was placed on the IR. So I guess that kind of makes it easy to like definitely hold Petrangelo for as long as Theodore is out, because now he's going to be back on that top power play, of course. But like, just curious, what's your take so far on the season in general, and like season in general, and if Theodore wasn't injured, like how concerned would you have been?
I would have, you know what? I'd find Petrangelo in similar territory to Letang because last season, for a long time now, going back since I'm just going until almost his whole career. All right, like Petrangelo's at least been on like a 1A 1B power play quarterback situation, or quarterbacking the majority. This season is the first, like Letang, in a long, long time that Petrangelo has not been a quarterback on a number 1 or 1A, 1B unit. Decidedly power play 2, and his production has been decidedly power play 2 with 2 power play points in 16 games, which is what I would expect like Chris Letang to have done from that spot by now. But the difference between Petrangelo and Letang is that Petrangelo is shooting a little more. He's got another half shot per game, and he's blocking a lot more, 3 blocks per night, which is in line with what Petrangelo has been doing for most of his time in Vegas. So for that reason, Elon, if you're comparing Letang and Petrangelo, even with a healthy Theodore, I would take Petrangelo. Without a healthy Theodore, this could be a moment for Petrangelo to step up. But honestly, on the season right now, he's on a 46-point pace. I could see him pretty much staying in that territory for as long as Theodore is the undisputed power play quarterback.
Yeah, well, for this week, anyways, it'll be Petrangelo because if he's on IR, that means that Theodore's going to miss the week. And then it'll be interesting to see what happens and if the Vegas Golden Knights can figure out a way to score some goals. Now it's going to be harder, obviously, with Theodore out of the lineup. Next up, Brian, we were talking last episode about Mika Zibanejad, who was on a bit of a cold streak, and you said you're not concerned at all. You looked at the underlying numbers. You're not seeing any. You were saying that I should maybe try to offer like Tage Thompson for Mika Zibanejad. Maybe I should have, because he had a really great week. He had 4 points in his last 3 games. So just going to mention that Brian totally called that Zibanejad bounce back. And so good job there. On the flip side, Alexis Lafreniere, who's someone that a lot of people have been saying is like, yo, man, this is the year. Like he's having his breakout. He's been so incredible. But all of a sudden, it's kind of had a bit of a halt, at least offensively. Only 1 goal in his last 5 games after a really great run. He's taken a lot of shots in these games for what it's worth. So take your victory lap on Zibanejad. And then I'm curious to know, like, if you had Lafreniere, now do you just kind of drop and move on to the next guy? Or do you think it's still worth holding Laf because of the great like run he had before?
Okay. Sorry. Thanks. Yeah, I'll take what you're saying about Zibanejad, and stand by my take. If for those who want the TLDR of the take last week was that Zibanejad seemed like he was underperforming, but with really healthy underlying numbers, healthier than what we saw from Thompson. So I'm curious if anyone was able to pull off that kind of move, how it went, and congrats if you did. I hope for Lafreniere, at all strengths, he's still looks okay. Like, right, the shots are still coming, and that's big. Like he had a 6-shot game. I don't know if that's the first time in his career, and I actually wish I'd looked that up before we started recording. But this is not a common thing for Lafreniere to shoot that often. He followed that up a couple nights later with a 4-shot game, so that's positive. And the one thing I will put out there for Lafreniere is that over his last 5 games, he's only been on the ice for 4 goals at all strengths, and up until this point, the on ice production had been better. So part of me wonders, Elon, if Lafreniere's cold streak doesn't mean that he's done. Like, and this is poof, and Lafreniere is turning back into a pumpkin. I think there's a decent chance that Alexis Lafreniere could still be about as good as he was before. I mean, the on ice shooting percentage was a little high at 5-on-5, but still, right now, Lafreniere is on a 52-point pace. I don't think that's like too much to ask going forward. His shooting percentage, like personally, is high, so I expect that to regress, but I also hope that he'll be able to pick up a few more assists to balance it out. So regardless, Lafreniere is not like the most appealing person to roster, especially when he's cold. Like, he's not someone that I think you have to hold on to. But a 55 point pace would even still be a nice step forward for him. And I still think he's in position to do that.
Okay, and then he's obviously playing with Artemi Panarin, who I just want to ask. Let me know if this is like a weird question, but like obviously Panarin is like for real, but is he like for real, like Cerise Alliance on the last Big Brother season? Like Panarin's like going insane this season. He has 29 points in 19 games after his 1 goal and 2 assists recent game versus Boston. But yeah, like he's always been good, obviously. But last year, like Panarin only paced for 92 points. He played all 82 games. Yeah, he had a 92-point season. Even in the previous year, he paced for 105, which is obviously like superstar level. But like this is like another level up. Like we were having a question in our Discord of like Panarin and Dobson for Adam Fox and Evander Kane. So kind of like you're comparing Panarin and Fox. Oh, it was in a dynasty league for what it's worth. So you know, it's kind of just like if Panarin is like actually this good, then like I feel like you prefer the Panarin side. But otherwise, like I'm obviously a big fan of Adam Fox. He's really great, and he'll be back soon. I was curious to get your take on like if like how much of what Panarin is doing this season is for real, or is he like more of like 100-point guy, 105-point guy, and not like 125?
I think he could be somewhere in between. One thing that's going to be hard for Panarin to hold up is 12 power play points in 19 games. So if I'm being honest, looking at his numbers on the power play, I don't see a whole lot of reasons to see why. Like, I guess the Rangers are shooting 22% with him on the ice, but they are looking like incredible on the power play. And honestly, about as incredible as they looked last year. And last year, Panarin had 36 power play points. So I think there's a good chance. I mean, at Panarin's current pace, he's going to be at 36 power play points by game 60 of the season, which I'm not sure is actually going to come to fruition. So I guess that's one way that he might regress closer towards 100 points. But Panarin, after a few years of taking 2.5 shots per game, he's actually done that most of his career. Panarin's first year with the Rangers, he teased us with 3 shots per game. This season, he's up to 4 shots per game raw, like just in counting stats, but that shows out so huge in his underlying numbers. Like his rates are off the charts, both on the power play and at 5-on-5. He has gotten a green light to just shoot the puck like he never ever has before. And I think that's pretty exciting because if he just holds his shooting percentage, which is like he's a high percentage converter, 15%, and it doesn't look like he's trading off any quality while getting some of this added quantity for Panarin. So Elon, I think he is for real. And I could see him, like, so far his best seasons have been 113-point paces, both in his first 2 years with the Rangers. I could see him being in that neighborhood, and the upside because of all these additional shots, I think is still higher than that.
All right, yeah, Team Panarin. He's great. I still remember his rookie season when he like was available in free agency at the start of the year, then just went
That was like
insane.
one of your first great calls on the podcast.
I was very excited about it. He beat out McDavid for the Calder that year, though of course McDavid was injured for a lot of it. Okay, I also want to call out. I think you said at the start of the year when Drake Batherson was like super cold, you said that you thought that he'll be fine and you would hold on. And yeah, he's been so good lately. We're looking at 7 points in the last 5 games for Batherson, taking a bunch of shots lately. Also, like he had a 4-shot game versus the Islanders yesterday. I guess he's also had a lot of 2-shot games in there. But yeah, you can't complain with the end results here. And yeah, Batherson has been great. So definitely I hope that the listeners listened to you and didn't drop him when he was cold before. And of course, any talk about Ottawa needs to include the amazing Tim Stützle, the Panarin of the Senators. Stützle is also just going nuts. He has now 22 points in 16 games on the year, so 113 point pace. You definitely want anyone who has exposure to Tim Stützle. In the last game, they actually were going with Matthew Joseph and Claude Giroux Stützle, which has been what we've been seeing for a while. But I saw just today, Ottawa tweeted out some new lines. Stützle with Tkachuk and Giroux, and then Batherson with Norris and Joseph. So I don't know, maybe things, I don't know. We'll see what happens with all of that. But anyways, I just want to throw out those guys are awesome. And then obviously, I guess the main guy to ask you about in terms of like a fantasy, like, actionable thing is Matthew Joseph has been doing so well lately. He's just like having a career year, but he's been playing a lot with Stützle. And I saw these lines come out today with Matthew Joseph now with Norris and Batherson, though I just was just saying how good Batherson has been. So yeah, I guess the question to you is, do you like jump on Matthew Joseph, or now are you a little more cool on him if you're seeing him away from Stützle at even strength?
I still like what I'm seeing from Matthew Joseph in the top six. He is taking more shot attempts than he did last year in Ottawa. So it seems like he's shooting like and many of those shots are getting to the net. He actually is looking like, I don't know if you remember when the Sens traded Nick Paul for Matthew Joseph and he came to the Sens and he looked really good. He's basically doing that again this season after last season. His role was diminished and kind of minimized. He was in the bottom six, but in the top six, yeah, I like what I see from Matthew Joseph. And I'm going to say, regardless of where I see him in the top six. Now, he's not like the most, guaranteed or sure shot kind of producer. And a lot of Joseph's points, like right now, he's on a point per game pace. But that's because the Sens are shooting almost 20% at 5-on-5 with Joseph on the ice, and that's not going to hold. But even with some regression, like I could see him, we were just talking about Alexis Lafreniere. I think I would take Mathieu Joseph, like, or at least put him in a similar conversation. I guess Joseph gets less power play time, so that might be one reason to prefer Lafreniere. But your question was, do I care about where he's moving in the top six? My answer is a little, but not automatically disregarding him because he's being moved away from Tim Stützle. But we also shouldn't disregard the impact of playing with Tim Stützle, right? It is a downgrade. So you're right to at least be mindful of the downgrade, but I'd still hopefully or be able to give Matthew Joseph the benefit of the doubt for the moment, just because the underlying numbers look good. As for Drake Batherson, happy to see him going, right? Point per game in his last 9 games, 3 shots per game in that stretch, 27 shots in 9 games. The one thing that I'm like, yeah, am I sure he's back though? Like, am I really comfortable with this? And the answer is like, I'm not completely comfortable, but it's still, of course, like I'm happy to see anything from Batherson after like just brutal luck last year and a brutal actual start to this year. But 6 shots but 6 goals on 27 shots for Batherson doesn't really encourage me over the last 9 games, right? That's not going to be a sustainable way for Batherson to keep producing at this rate. He is a 15% shooter, and that's only like a 22% conversion rate. So he might be close to that, but I'd like him to actually be there. And maybe I'm just getting greedy now, but that's what I'd love to see from Drake Batherson still. So we'll see if Matthew Joseph can get him going on his line, but at least Batherson is doing something. And gosh, am I relieved to see that.
Yeah, great job, pal. We're going to take a break. When we come back, some more accountability as we're going to look through what Trev has written that we predicted a month ago and how it's looking now. So we'll get to that in just a sec. You're listening to Keeping Karlsson. Okay, Brian, we are back, and I think this is going to become a regular feature on every episode is our accountability check, as Trev's going to keep pointing out some things we said a month ago to us for us to check in on. Well, let's start with John Karlsson. In preseason, Brian wanted to put Karlsson in tier 2 among defensemen with Hamilton and Dahlin. Currently, taking a look, he started strong, but now he's averaging 4.76, a couple points per game. He's on a 57-point pace. So I guess that one not looking so great right now for you. One that's not looking that great for me, though I think I have an excuse. Maybe you'll have an excuse for John Karlsson. We talked about Toffoli and Meyer, and on a Patreon cast a month ago, I said that I would take Toffoli over Meyer. If you recall, Meyer had that super slow start to the season. Meyer then kind of went off after that. He's averaged 6 couple points per game in the games he's played. He's obviously been injured. Toffoli has only averaged 4.8 couple points per game, so it looks like a huge L for me. I will say that things kind of changed when Meyer like was getting on the top power play after Jack Hughes was injured. I am curious to see once everyone's fully healthy again, if we kind of regress back to how things were going before. I guess you can't also really give me the L there because Meyer's been injured. So you can't be like, oh, if only I would have. But we'll see how. Obviously, that'll be a fun. I think Trev, we're gonna have to put that one down to like check in on again in like a month once we get like back to just fully healthy, including Meyer. And then one last one, Matheson. This was a preseason one for Jeremy and Trev on a short shifts episode, where they were both predicting that Matheson was going to be like a top 10 defenseman, like a 60+ point guy with good shots and peripherals. And he's currently averaging 5.43, a couple points per game, is on a 65-point pace. So that's a W for Jeremy and Trev, who were high on Matheson.
Yeah. What can I say? Matheson's doing great. As I don't know. I thought you were going to keep going through all the rest. Sorry.
That's all of them. That's it.
Okay.
So you could just comment on you could say, yeah, Matheson's good. And then whatever, you could comment on Karlsson if you have anything to say. I gave my like whiny excuses about Meyer. So you could do the same if you want.
Yeah. Yeah, so good call on Matheson. He's looking like the guy he did at the end of last season. And again, like we're never like I'm not never 100% sure that I can keep expecting from Matheson what he's been giving, but the longer he gives it, the more I can expect it. So that's good. As for the Devils, Elon, I just want to mention, like you were talking about Meyer and Toffoli. They are in a pretty similar position at 5-on-5 to the Oilers. They're like the Oilers of the East. Their goaltending has been horrid. They actually both have exactly 895 save percentages. They both have team shooting percentage that is like near the bottom of the league. Edmonton's 6.6% and New Jersey is like 7. So like both of these are bad and they deserve more than they're getting. And if you look at the share of expected goals that each team is getting, they're both at a 55% share and like change in the decimal section. And they're doing it differently. Like Edmonton is like has more expected goals for and more expected goals against, and New Jersey has fewer expected goals for, but also fewer expected goals against. So I don't know. I just thought it was an interesting parallel to find both of these teams who are kind of like flailing and we're kind of questioning, are they as good as we thought they were? Well, they're being sunk by bad goaltending and unreasonably like bad variance shooting percentages. So I think both, even with like a lack of in-house goaltending solution, should see their luck kind of even out over the next little while. And that should, for the guys and for the forwards in New Jersey, like we were talking about Nico Hischier earlier, I think they're going to be okay as a result in the long run. I know some of them already are, but if you're worried, if you're worried about whether Timo Meier can keep it up, I feel like there's still a lot of offensive hope from the guys, even if they've let you down here and there over the course of the season so far.
Yeah. I mean, obviously it's going to come down to deployment, right? Once everyone's healthy, then not everyone fits on that top power play. So we'll see if Meyer can, hold that spot that he had while Hughes was out. Brian, next up to end the show, but we got a lot of it. I want to play some sustainable or fleeting. I've got a bunch of hot and cold streaks for you. And so I guess we could just kind of go through all these guys and you could let me know if you think they're going to keep up what they're doing to some extent, or if it's time to expect things to go back to how we expected them to be. Let's start in Boston, where we got a tweet from @NewJerseyWizards saying, apologize to Charlie Coyle now. Capital on now. Brian, apparently we said some terrible things about Charlie Coyle, which I guess I don't fully recall, but I'm pretty sure I did say, like, man, this top 6 looks like these two centers are going to be a lot worse this year without Krejci and Bergeron. Now that it's Coyle and Zacha, and both Coyle and Zacha have been so good, and Boston has been so good. So like clearly we were wrong, and I definitely wasn't targeting Charlie Coyle specifically in any of my drafts or in free agency, and that is biting me for sure. Yeah, I apologize to anyone who I said you shouldn't grabbed Charlie Coyle, because he's now up to 19 points in 20 games on the year after his 2 goals against the Rangers, currently riding an insane 7 points in 5 games streak with a couple multi-pointers in there, 4 shots in each of his last 3 games. The 31-year-old Charlie Coyle is scorching hot. He's not on the top power play, but he is, of course, in that top 6. Lately, he's been playing on a line with James Van Riemsdyk and Trent Frederick, which you wouldn't think would be great. And he's on the second power play. Like the deployment makes you think, but the production makes you go, So Brian, is Charlie Coyle a huh or a huh?
I'm trying to differentiate the two different huhs. Huh or
And
a
should we
huh?
apologize? I guess I didn't
The
actually apologize.
the second huh sounds more like skeptical. But yeah, without even picking a huh, I want to put it on the record. I'm sorry to Charlie Coyle. I'm sorry that I didn't see that you would double your shooting percentage, and go on a run like this. I'm also sorry that I didn't see that you would be in on 100% of the goals scored while you're on the ice versus the usual 2/3 of the goals scored while you're on the ice. And I'm also sorry that I didn't anticipate your career high shooting percentage or on ice shooting percentage coming over 11%. And as as you mentioned, on a line that doesn't seem all that impressive either between Coyle, Frederick, and Van Riemsdyk, lest I have to give more apologies in the future. But that is my very, very genuine and sincere apology to Charlie Coyle.
Cold. Okay. By the way, JVR was benched for a game, but he's getting up there in age. I wouldn't read too much into it. Let's see if it happens again. Next up, Brian, this is like, I guess maybe doesn't fully fit in here with the sustainable or fitting. Obviously, you're not going to be getting Kale McCarr out of free agency. But, just like how I was saying before about how Kucherov, we sort of had dropped him down in our, draft rankings and didn't see him as like the top 4 or 5 guy that he had been previously. Kale McCarr, I feel like going into last season, everyone was looking at him as maybe like a 5th overall pick, someone worth like, picking ahead of the top end forwards because of all of his production as a defenseman. And then he kind of let us down a bit last year. This year, he fell out of the first round in my couple division, in a lot of couple divisions. Huge mistake. Huge mistake. I blew it. A lot of people blew it. Kale McCarr is incredible. He's now got 30 points in 20 games. Should I even ask you sustainable or fleeting, or should we just all slap ourselves in the head and be like, why did we doubt this guy? He's so incredible.
Yeah, it kind of doesn't even matter because if it's fleeting, Makar is still going to be like a 90 to 100 point pace player, and that's still amazing. One incredible thing about Kale McCarr is that he continues to be a 10% shooter as a defenseman, which is an exceedingly rare quality and almost impossible quality in the NHL. So yeah, he's been absolutely fantastic. 10 power play points in 20 games. And that's right in line with last year, where Makar had 30 power play points in 60 games. And the year before, basically, where he had 34 power play points in 77. Like, Kale McCarr has a track record of producing. Normally I say, oh, he's got a power play point every other game. You can't keep that up. Kale McCarr has a track record of keeping that up. And I also say, if you're a defenseman shooting 10%, you can't keep that up. Kale McCarr has a history, a track record of keeping that up. If I wanted to knit one pick or pick one knit, I would just say, like, I wish Kale McCarr would shoot a little more. His shot rates are down a little bit at 5-on-5, and a little, well, like, he's making up for some of it on the power play, but not entirely. He's down about a half shot per game altogether compared to last season and the season before it. So Kale, you can shoot a little more. It might be because he's playing a little less. So his minutes maybe are getting controlled a little more to keep him healthier than he has been in past seasons. But yes, all hail Kale McCarr.
By the way, Patty is saying that JVR wasn't benched. He had a family day off. So, okay, exactly. So I meant to just say, like, no, don't worry about it. So, Patty, I'm with you. We're in agreement here. I
Elon,
guess,
when will you apologize to James Van Riemsdyk for
I'm
saying he was
sorry.
benched?
I should have a whole podcast of
Sounds
just
like a coach's
apologies.
decision versus a personal decision. A
um,
whole podcast of apologies.
would that be
How long
good?
would it be?
I don't know. I have a lot to apologize for. Sorry if I recommended for anyone to draft Taylor Hall. Sorry if I recommended for anyone to draft Troy Terry. Sorry if I recommended for anyone to draft Patrick Laine. These are all people I
Elon's just
drafted,
reading
by the
his
way.
roster.
I guess in the same vein as Kale McCarr, let's just mention really quickly that Connor McDavid is kind of like back to being Connor McDavid. He has a goal and an assist today in the game against the Ducks, and it's only in the first period. So maybe we're like on the precipice of like an 8-point Connor McDavid game. Who knows? But yeah, like a lot of people were kind of buying a little low on McDavid after a slow start to the year, including an injury, and saying he's not looking like himself. Well, he had 7 points in his last 3 games going into today. And today, like I'm saying, is looking like it's going to be another barn burner. So anyone who was able to get McDavid for like a little bit cheap, Yeah, you're looking good right
Congrats.
now. He's good.
Yeah, I mean, but count us amongst those people who were saying, if you want to try and avoid the risk because we don't know what's going on with McDavid and like find yourself some certainty, then yeah, maybe you can try and deal with him. But we were also saying, if you're ready to take on some risk, this is your chance to get McDavid. So, I hope everybody still feels okay with whatever actions they took in that strange couple weeks where McDavid had just 2 points in 6 games and only had more than 3 shots twice, which is, very un-McDavid like. But he seems to be back at, Elon. But one of the, like, I want to know why. I want to know why. Like, was it
Why
just,
what?
I want to know why he's back now, quote unquote.
Maybe he's like back to full health. Like maybe he had a bit of a
Well, he
lingering.
sat out for a couple games and then he played 6 more and didn't do a whole lot, and now he's back. And honestly, coming into tonight, Elon, he had the 4 points against Washington and a point against Carolina, but still only 3 shots combined in those 2 games.
I mean,
So I
I don't
still don't
know.
know. I just feel like there are like unanswered questions. So it's kind of like the Hedman situation in Tampa, where it's like all water under the bridge now because he's quarterbacking again and everything's fine. But we still never found out why he was moved off the unit, why he stayed off the unit. Sometimes I have questions and I just want answers. And maybe they aren't relevant to the bigger fantasy picture, but maybe they are.
Yeah, well, I guess that would be a fun question actually for McDavid. I think we talked about it on the Patreon cast on a recent show. Like the reporter asked him a question. He was like, "Oh, you guys ask me the same questions all the time." Maybe that would be a good question for McDavid. Like, hey, why were you cold for a bit and now you're doing better? What's the difference? Like, can you please explain? That would be fun. But yeah, they would ask questions like that. All right, Brian. Next up in our sustainable or fleeting, Alex Lyon in Detroit. Holy moly! This guy hadn't played all season, but then he got in recently for 3 games, 3 of the last 4 games actually for Detroit, and he's been incredible. He's now up to a 952 save percentage after his 37 save win over Minnesota today, stopping 37 of 38. I wonder if like Ville Husso was already doing badly, which I guess was the reason why Alex Lyon kept on getting the net after having good games. And at this point, he also had a shutout, by the way, I should mention, against New Jersey in his previous game. I don't know. Or is it time for people to go and grab Alex Lyon? And should Ville Husso owners be like super, super nervous that he's lost the job now? And this happened last year, by the way, with Bobrovsky at the end of the season, if you don't recall.
Yeah, Huzo's had some really bad shorthanded performances that have like led to him at 5-on-5. Huzo's actually playing above expected, but overall on the season, 888 save percentage, 37%, no, 36% quality starts for Huso. Reimer's actually been okay, 917 save percentage, but 50% quality starts. It's hard. It's hard when your goalies aren't giving you a chance to win night in, night out. So why not give Alex Lyon a shot? Like the interesting thing to me, Elon, is just that the Wings, like their goalies look good at 5-on-5, and so I feel like where Husso and Reimer have struggled, at different extents, but has been in kind of low stakes, or not low stakes situations, but situations where you usually have a small sample size and it's easy to like screw up several times, and then it all balances out in the long run. One thing that's interesting to me is that in one of Lions' games, like he only faced 16 shots, and that was against New Jersey. But Detroit's protection has been like not the best in the league, but also not the worst in the league. So anyway, they're giving their goalies a chance to win most games, or at least a chance to defend. And I don't know if Lyon can do enough to really steal a bunch of starts, but I'm glad you're bringing him up. He's in the picture. We've seen him do this before. It's not a far back memory, right? Since Lyon took that job and helped the Panthers get into the playoffs, which then brought them to the Cup Finals. So we'll see what happens here, but I'm not seeing any like underlying numbers telling me, screaming at me that Reimer and Husso can't do the job that Lyon is coming on the scene to do.
Fair, but also I would say drop Husso. That's my opinion. Like at this point now, like how many starts is he going to get? Yeah, and Shams is saying that the reason why Husso hasn't played as much recently is because he stayed in North America because he had a kid while the rest of the team went to Sweden. But I still think you drop Husso at this point. I don't know if you grab Lyon or you start streaming, but now that they have another option Like, what are you now going to start benching Line again for the rest of the season after he just keeps winning games? I don't think so. I think maybe, I don't know. Well, this will be a good one for Trev to check in on. This will be a good one for Trev to check in on in a month and see what's going on with the Detroit Net. Next up, Brian, we got some hot San Jose Sharks, who I think we need to start adjusting a little bit. They're not like as bad as they seemed at the start. They've had some good games recently. Like I said, they just won their last game, and a lot of it has to do with, first of all, the captain, Tomas Hertl, who I just think is like so incredible. Like the fact that he is having such a good, he's like Bedard, right? He's like not really surrounded by anyone that good, but he just like continues to put up points. We're now up to 5 points in Hertl's last 4 games, 16 points in 21 games on the season. This is not something I thought that Hertl would be capable of doing early on in the year. But yeah, he's had 2 straight multi-point games. If somehow he's still available for you going into this 4-game week for San Jose where they have 2 off-day games, definitely grab Hertl. And then if you can't get him, maybe we're actually at a point where we could recommend other Sharks aside from Hertl, which is very rare. But our old friend Mike Hoffman on a really nice run. He's scored now in 3 straight games and has 5 goals in his last, nope, scratch that, 6 goals in his last 6 games for Hoffman. A lot of these are 2 and 3 shot games. So I'm sure you'll throw out your, he's not going to keep up the shooting percentage thing, but hard to argue with a guy who's, getting good deployment and scoring. And then also got to give some credit to Kalen Addison, who was kind of like meh in his tenure in Minnesota, but he came to San Jose. He's been on the top power play. He has 3 power play points in his last 4 games. 4 assists in that span. So if your league counts power play points, or you just want to get an assist now and then, Kalen Addison's looking pretty good. So yeah, going into next week, I take a look at both Addison and Hoffman as ads, especially with that good schedule.
Yeah. And I think that's about all there is to say about it, really. Like Addison and Hoffman might be able to help you in the short term. Hoffman, I'll rule out as being someone who can really help you in the long term. Addison, I'll stay open to, although I really don't see anything like so quantitatively different in Kalen Addison's game versus the game that he showed in Minnesota that got
But
him
are you
pretty
looking
much
at
nowhere.
But are you looking at even strength like you usually do? Because clearly he's just getting all of his points on the power play.
Yeah, well, I think that's it, right? So, and that's great that Addison is getting it. Even strength, nothing's happening for Addison. He has like no points, right? Sorry, actually, yeah, he has no points. He's seeing more ice time, which is great. And on the power play, I actually like he's shooting less than he was in Minnesota. Like he was being able to take more shots, and I can't really figure out exactly. Well, the reason I think he's doing better in San Jose is because they're scoring on 20% of the shots that while Addison's on the ice on the power play versus Minnesota, who is really struggling and scoring on only 8% of their shots. So maybe this is to say that Addison should have done better in Minnesota, but didn't. But still, that said, even if Kalen Addison pulls a Cale Makar and gets you 1 power play point every other game, that's going to be about it for Kalen Addison's production, right? There's not going to be a whole lot of 5-on-5, or at least I wouldn't expect a whole lot. You're getting a lot of 0s and 1s in the shots column. Yeah, with the occasional 3 and 2, fine. But still, even when Addison's producing, like this is like a really low end, like 1 game, you're hoping for 1 power play point stream and then moving on, I assume.
Yeah, no, you're probably right. But hey, for next week with a good schedule, if you can get all 4 games from Addison, you might get 2 points, which is maybe not that bad for a defensive streamer. Brian, we still have a bunch more hot and cold streaks to get to, which we will find, which we will to get to, and we will get to them after our final break. You're listening to Keeping Karlsson. Okay, pal, we are back. And like I said, we are playing Sustainable or Fleeting. Next up, we've got Victor Olofsson on the Buffalo Sabres, who put up 2 straight 2-assist games. Aside from that, he hasn't been doing too much, but I have to bring him up because he has recently been bumped up to the top power play, bumping Dylan Cousins to PP2, along with JJ Paterka, who we were loving, but no, it's been Victor Olofsson of all people up there with Skinner, Tuck, Middlestat, and Dahlin. Of course, they did just get destroyed by New Jersey, so we'll see if things change for the next game. But is there any interest in what Olofsson is doing? Is this sustainable or fleeting?
Yeah, I'll go fleeting. I mean, I like that he's on the top power play, is Victor Olofsson. But I'm going to say, honestly, similar to Middlestat and even less than Middlestat. Middlestat, when he was on the top power play, I was like, yeah, this is interesting, but still might not be enough to really hold my interest. And I'll say the same for Olofsson, even though I'm even more certain he won't hold my interest. I've never heard of a guy more lauded for his shot than Victor Olofsson, who just does not even shoot. In his last 3 games, he has 2 shots combined. Yes, he's got 4 points, but he has just 2 shots. And only twice this season in 15 games has Olofsson taken more than 2 shots on goal. And even that's been kind of rare. Like half his games have been 0 or 1. So that's my Victor Olofsson take. Elon, power play 1, yes. So you can be interested in him for that reason. But I'm even less optimistic than I was about Casey Middlestat being like really legit rosterable.
Yeah, and I could see Paterka getting back on the top power play like he was for a bit. So we'll have to see. Paterka's still like on a 6 points and 6 game streak. Andy's asking what to do with him. I'd hold. Well, anyways, Buffalo plays Monday, so at least hold for Monday. Then you could always reassess. But yeah, Buffalo has some fun names right now in the roster. By the way, they called up Yuri Kulik and Isaac Rosen. I'm gonna do that again. They called up Yuri Kulich and Isaac Rosen. So like those are 2 fun young names to join Zach Benson. And like even the slightly older guys like Paterka and Krebs. Like you got the future of the Sabres right now. Like you're getting a little sneak peek. And I have a feeling this is going to be a roster that like in a couple years from now, it's going to look like a lot of studs. Right now it kind of looks like I don't know, like not a team that's going to score a lot of goals maybe.
Rosen and Kulich are the 2 first rounders, or 2 of the first rounders that Buffalo had in 2021 and 2022. Isaac Rosen, 14th overall in 2021, 19 points in 16 games for Rochester of the AHL this season. Kulich, I think I'm going to go with Kulich for now, Elon.
Pretty sure it's Coolidge.
Kulich, 28th overall in 2022, and over a point per game as well. 17 points in 16 games, 11 of those goals for Yuri Kulich. So I'm not sure that that's going to translate like immediately. Like Kulich is 19 and Rosen is 20. So there's still a lot of room for these guys to develop and grow. But I do wonder what it says about what Buffalo's doing this year and like what their plans might be based on, I feel like based on what they're getting in net, which is like not solid goaltending. Maybe they are seeing this as a development season. It is starting to be my guess, especially with Olofsson and Paterka and Middlestat taking turns on the top unit and that sort of being like a rotating cast. This doesn't necessarily mean it has a whole lot of fantasy relevance, but I'm just putting that out there as a thought that I've had.
Can I just say, please get well soon, Tage Thompson. Come back. I need you. We all need you. Okay. Next up, Brian, in LA, he's still at it. Trevor Moore has now put up 3 straight multi-point games, 6 points in his last 3 games. He's now up to 19 points in 19 games on the season. Trevor Moore, sustainable or fleeting? This guy's incredible. You got him as a free agent.
Yeah, this happens like regularly for Trevor Moore. And he goes until he doesn't. And it's fantastic to see him going. Right now, Trevor Moore is going because he has 11 goals on 53 shots, 4 on his last 11 to be specific. That's a 21% shooting percentage. And this guy is not a high end converter. He has had a 6 and 8.5 shooting percentage in his last 2 seasons. And that actually might be like, I'd say that 8.5 number might be around his true shooting talent, maybe 10% if we're being generous. But I love that Trevor Moore takes a bunch of shots. I love that somehow he has 5 power play points in 19 games from the second unit, which is not, or like, I guess it's like the 1B unit, which even that I wouldn't expect to keep up. So it's a nice little run for Trevor Moore. And when he gets hot, he is so valuable as a free agent. I've had him a few times over the last few seasons where he's done this. Feels great. My only caveat is just watch, because once he stops, he does stop. So keep an eye out for when you're snoozing on Trevor Moore. But for right now, you are wide awake and loving it.
Yeah, I mean, put me down, Trev. We could check it in a month. I'm gonna call it. I think Trevor Moore's the hold for the season. I don't think he's gonna be a guy you're gonna end up deciding you're snoozing on.
Huh. Is there a reason you think that compared to like prior seasons where he wasn't a season long hold?
Yeah. I just think he's okay, wait, let me think of an actual answer here to say that. Let me just get some more information here up 1 second. Yeah, I mean, I'd say one reason is that he's playing at even strength with Kevin Fiala, who is, by the way, I didn't even mention him, but he's like super hot right now. Incredible. I feel like that's just like such a great spot for him to be. I also think like LA is like deeper now. Like he's on the second power play, Trevor Moore, but like Pierre-Luc Dubois is on that power play, who was
It's a
normally top.
1B.
Yeah, so I just think that LA is deep enough now to give Trevor Moore. So, he's not just on the line with like Dano and Arvidsson being like a shutdown person. Even that was like pretty good for a long time. Like, and we'll see what happens when Arvidsson comes back. Just a hunch. I'm not saying I'm going to bet my house on this one, but I'm really excited what I'm seeing from Trevor Moore. He's not like someone that I'm thinking like I'm just riding until he like goes cold for a couple games and then drop. I think if you do that, then you're going to quickly regret it and be like, why didn't I just hold? He's so much better than the person I dropped him for. But we'll see.
We'll see.
We'll
Cool.
see.
Count me as Trev. Count me as not on the same side as Elon on this one.
Okay. Can we go to Ranta quickly? Let's do a sustainable or fleeting on the negative side. He had, like I said, -10 couple points versus Tampa. I've never seen any. We try to make the goalie scoring in the cupful such that even a bad game isn't like too punishing. Like it's only like -1.5 for a goal against. You get 0.3 for a save. Generally, even a bad game gets you like close to zero. But yeah, -10, insane. We had a question like, can he bounce back? Like, is he done? Like, has he just been like, like Scott Pilgrim when the guys get punched so hard that they turn into coins and they poof off of the earth forever? Like, it's like I just wonder, has that happened to Ranta, or like, is there a chance that he could still be worth holding? Like, today Kochekov obviously got the start, and Carolina had a comeback win with a couple late goals in the third over Columbus. So good game for Kochekov, stopped 21 of 23. Is it like a clearly now they're gonna ride Kochekov for a while because Ranta is just reeling forever? Like I'm just curious to know, like how done is this guy, or do you think like now's a good time to like maybe grab him because you could just forget about this one bad game?
Well, I'm going to point out that 4 of the goals against for on Ranta were on the power play. So, like, it's still bad. Okay. It's bad any way you slice it, but at least it wasn't 8 even strength goals. All right. It was 4 power play goals, 3 in 4 minutes in the second period, and then one again, like with 2 minutes left in the game. So, Elon, whether or not this means that like Kochekov gets to run with things, um, depends, I think, on how well Kochekov plays. And so far this season, hasn't been that great. 875 save percentage, has just one quality start out of 4 and one really bad start too. So the same amount. So both Kochekov and Ranta have been bad. And I think that's a reason to not say that Kochekov gets a good run of games, because Kochekov is going to have to actually prove that he's not anti Ranta.
Okay, yeah. So we'll see. I think a lot of people will be really nervous to stream Ranta in for the next game, which probably means he'll do good because that's generally things tend to sometimes not go when you're doing single game decisions. It's really hard to predict, of course. Next up, or actually, while we're on Carolina, we were nervous about Brent Burns. It was looking like he was getting bumped from the top power play, but then D'Angelo just started getting scratched every game, which is obviously bad for him. And he's a clear drop, by the way. He's been scratched, I think, 3 games in a row now. Brent Burns has been on the top power play, and he is on a bit of a hot streak. No points today, but I think now would be a good time to feel good if you held Burns, and if for some reason you dropped him and he's out there, we'll get him back. I guess obviously,
Yeah.
probably it's not available.
Well, I don't know. He only has 9 points in 20 games, and 5 of those points are goals. So, like, this isn't the way a defenseman is supposed to be producing, right? And it's great that he's back on the top power play, and maybe that'll help. But Brent Burns has 2 assists in his last 16 games, which is crazy. Like that's not very defenseman like at all. And part of that is because his points participation is just 25% at 5-on-5. And even though team shooting is actually pretty good in Carolina, Brent Burns is just not getting in on the action. And especially being on the top power play, yeah, I think there's a chance for him to get back into things. I'm going to throw this one at you. I have Sean Dursey, who's also been cold. I'm wondering if you think that like if I traded Dursey, if I offered Dursey for Burns, what do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, I
Dursey's
like
a little more
Durs.
locked in on the top power play.
Jersey's locked in. He's like still pretty good for the periffs, right? He's at like 4-4-3. I'm looking at blocks, by the way. Like he's really reliable for the blocks. Honestly, I think I'd prefer Jersey. I don't see why you do that.
Yeah, me too. I'm trying to think of like a buy low for Burns, and that would be the one on my roster. I wouldn't do Sanheim for Burns. I'm thinking of other guys we've talked about tonight. I would do Seth Jones for Brent
Oh yeah.
Burns.
I mean, but no, you
Good
can't buy
luck.
low with someone who's also cold.
You can't sell low and buy low at the same time.
And also, Brent Burns isn't that cold, right? Like he's now pointless in his last two, but before that, he had a run of 5 points in 4 games. So, I think the Burns manager is pretty happy, and you're gonna have to give him a pretty decent offer. And you're gonna have to give them a pretty decent offer to get Burns off of their hands at this point. But yeah, speaking of Jersey, he's on a bit of a cold streak. I do love the blocks. Who's not cold on Arizona is their maybe like best line, which is surprising. I didn't think I'd be saying this, but this line of Bjugstad, Lawson Krause, and Matthias Michelli just every game produces. Like we're at a point now where Lawson Krause, we keep talking about. I don't know, Brian, if you've changed your mind. Like, I guess you keep saying he's going to slow down. Hasn't happened yet. Another great week for Krause. 3 points in his last 3 games, all goals. And like these aren't like I know you could say probably it's a high shooting percentage. I'd imagine when you score in 3 straight games, it's usually a high shooting percentage. But these are like games where he's shot 7, 4, and 3 times. So he's taking a lot of shots. So maybe if not all of them should be going in, it's not like and plus the shots are valuable. So I think Krause, I'd say must roster. I wish I grabbed him when I had the chance a few weeks back. Michelli doing amazing, assisting on all those Krause goals. And then also Nick Bjugstad, who we don't really talk about much on the show. I think that we're probably both in agreement that Krause and Michelli, like pretty much you should definitely grab them. I wonder if you have to start saying the same thing about Bjugstad, who now has 4 points in his last 3 games. He's had some big shot games. He's had a 5 and a 4 recently. We're up to 14 points in 20 games now for Bjugstad, which is a 57-point pace and rising. So yeah, I like all these guys. I don't know. Arizona is
Yeah.
looking good.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna poo-poo Lawson Krause, Elon. Yeah, he's got a lot of goals lately. He's got 5 goals on his last 24 shots. But those 24 shots, as you mentioned, have come in 6 games, and he's shooting 21%. But Elon, guess what Lawson Krause's career shooting percentage is?
Is it high?
It's not far off of 20%, or at least so sorry, his most recent, like not career, last 3 years is 17%. So he's been a pretty efficient converter, and he's been someone who only takes a couple shots per game. But now that he's shooting a whole bunch more, and by the way, the hits are still coming too. Nice hit numbers too. So hits and shots from Krause, and the goals. Yeah, honestly, like you said, I could say they're unsustainable, but hey, I think they're not completely unsustainable. Like maybe you should have 1 or 2 less, but even then, like you said, the hits and blocks are valuable. And so that's something worth having. Also worth noting, like Krause cannot buy an assist right now either. He has 3 assists on the season. Last season, like he only had 21 in 77 games. Like he's not a big disher, but he still should be able to pick up a few more than he has so far. So yeah, Elon, I like Lawson Krause, and I like last year he was a 48-point player. This year he's on pace for 56. That seems like a reasonable step up for him to take if he keeps shooting this way. And Michelli, yeah, I mean, I've been on the Michelli train for a little while since last season. Nice, steady, consistent, under the radar producer, and Bjugstad's along for the ride. I don't want to take anything away from any of these guys. Of course, like they could all fall when they do fall off. They might all fall off together, and I'm not going to say they're going to be consistently producing the way they have been lately for the rest of the season. But I would wait for them to show me they're not before giving up on them.
Yeah, I grabbed Bjugstad in a super deep league. For those of us who here, super deep league. Like you said, Brian, we are in some other leagues, not in Cacuffle. In this league, I still haven't lost yet, and I think it's going to be really great. I'm really excited that I got Bjugstad when I did, and I think it was just like last week, and I'm expecting him to potentially be a season hold for a league like that's a super deep one. Okay, next up, let's go to Columbus. So they just played today. They lost. I wanted to bring up Boone Jenner, who is doing great. He's on a great hot streak. Did he get another point today? No, he did not. Well, okay, forget him then. But no, Kirill Marchenko is doing great. Columbus has a great schedule next week. I think I've said this word great. I need to improve my vocabulary. But Columbus plays Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, like 4 off-day games next week. I guess that means we have to hold Fantilli. And Laine is just the whole situation with Laine just drives me crazy.
He's doing just enough, right, to keep you from punt. I mean, what would it take
not
for you
really
to drop Laine entirely?
I just think I wouldn't. I just think that I'm just gonna stick with him because I drafted him so high, and it's like I don't
Yeah.
even know what it would take. Like maybe if he started playing like 12 minutes a game every game, being on the fourth line. But Fantilli is someone I think you can drop. I was excited about him. He went on a run a little earlier, but now he's like only got 1 point in his last 7 games. I kind of want to drop him, but I can't because of his good schedule. Though sometimes I hold on to these people who have good schedules. And then if they get me like 0.5 and 0.75 a couple points per game, it's like great, I got 4 games. What do you think? Is there any reason to hold Fantilli and expect better? Like assuming like we weren't just like banking on the schedule to help out.
No, not especially. Like I think the schedule is reason enough to at least like hope for something. But I mean, honestly, talking about Fantilli doesn't seem like so different from talking about Liney. Like they're not shooting a lot. They're getting like second line minutes at best. And I don't have much faith night in, night out that they're going to do a whole lot. They just, with Columbus's schedule lately, they get a lot of opportunities to do something. Both should be, well, Liney should be better than he's been because he's been in the NHL a while. Fantilli, you might hope that at some point, yeah, he puts it together. Like, remember, he's still a rookie. He's barely 19 years old. So there's room for him to grow this season into a player that is rosterable. It's just a matter of when. And I don't know that it's going to be an overnight thing either. So you could hold him for the schedule, but also you don't have to hold him for the schedule. Like if you could get 2 games from Michelli, I'm just like throwing it's. I know this doesn't make sense, but if you could get like 2 games from Michelli and 2 games from Bjugstad instead of the games from Fantilli, I would rather like stream two better guys in for a couple games each than wait on Fantilli for the whole week.
Bummer. Oh well. I'll give him the week since I already have him. But yeah, over on Seattle, I guess let's end the show. I got to bring up Ellie Tolvanen again. I know we've talked about him a lot. He's got 11 points his last 11 games, had a huge 2-goal, 1 assist game, a couple back there. He had been playing with Bjorkstrand, who I didn't actually see Shams, a rare non-Shams tweeted injury, but like Fantrax told me that Bjorkstrand is injured. So I don't know. I guess we haven't gotten a good update yet on how long he'll be out for. But yeah, Tolvanen, what do you think, Brian? 11 points in his last 11. Obviously, he's not going to do that, but is this like a season long hold? Ooh, here's a fun one for you to end the show. Tolvanen or Trevor Moore? Who's more likely to be worth rostering all season between the two?
I'm gonna go Tolvanen just because the upside is untapped, and I did that pretty quickly just because I'm pretty confident I know where Moore's ceiling is, and Moore might still do better like in the long run, but even if he does better, I still don't think it'll be like terrible in a terribly rosterable way. I'm looking at Tolvanen's numbers, and not much has really changed at 5-on-5, like almost at all. And so I'm trying to figure out exactly where these extra points are coming from. And I can't, which feels like exactly a Seattle quandary. Like his shot rates are pretty similar to last year. His on ice shooting percentage is pretty similar. His on ice expected goals are pretty similar. I guess the one thing that, like the one improvement that I do see for Tolvanen is last season, he was only participating on half the goals scored while he's on the ice during his time in Seattle. This year, he's in on 70%, which seems like a more sustainable number. And I think that's the reason why Tolvanen's managed a 56-point pace, which is like high end for Seattle forward. So I think he can keep that up. And I think he's more likely to keep that up than Trevor Moore. So give me Tolvanen.
Okay, Brian. And with that, unless you have any final thoughts on any of these guys, I think we're gonna wrap this up here. What a fun show! It always like flies by, but yeah, it's been a couple hours, and now we gotta start ramping up for the next shows. We got a lot of stuff coming at you coming up. We got 2 short shifts this week. Last week, just a single short shift because of the weird schedule. But yeah, we've got our team of Shams, Jeremy, and Lewis coming back at you in full force next week. And then, of course, I'll be back with Matchup Maximizer on Saturday. Then Brian will do the mega show on Sunday. You know how it goes. Strap in and get ready as we continue to try to help you be successful in your fantasy leagues. I hope you're enjoying all of this content. We'd love a subscribe wherever you get your podcast, auto download those shows. We would love if you would consider giving us a 5-star review wherever you get those shows. Help spread the word. If you want to support the show financially, you can throw us $5 US a month on Patreon, and we throw a ton of perks at you, including access to our awesome Discord community with a lot of really smart minds. I love hanging out. That's where I spend most of my time actually on the internet, is in our Discord, and it's a lot of fun. Also, I believe we're getting to a point in the season. I've been talking to Kevin. It seems like we're running a little bit low on our cupful wait list. And unfortunately, teams that maybe are like not off to a good start, that always happens. You got some people who decide, I'm not gonna pay. I'm not really into this anymore. So we are getting into the season where it's gonna be time that we're gonna need some replacement managers. And so now would be a good time if you're a patron, you haven't signed up for the wait list yet, to get on that, or you can sign up as a patron. And I think you're gonna be able to get a team sometime in like the next month or so if you're on there.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna say, like, sounds like a bit of a bummer, right? That managers are going inactive, but the positive spin on this is that we know, right? And we're working to replace them, because one of the great things about the Cupful is that we try and make sure and support everyone in being active. No dead teams. So it's competitive and fair for all the way through, because it's not fair if you play a team that's active week 1 and then your opponent, who you're fighting for a playoff spot with, plays them in like week 20 and they've been checked out. So that's I just wanted to say, Elon, there's a good reason for this. So we welcome everyone to the wait list. And if you have like concerns about like where you're going to be on the wait list or how long it might take, send us a note, like on Twitter, DM us, or find a way. Like, I think you can write us on Patreon, even if you're not a patron, and we'll help you understand when you might get a shot.
Yeah, and thanks so much to Kevin. You're like doing such a great job of being on top of the inactive teams, taking over when he needs to, like reaching out to people on the wait list. Like, Kevin's incredible. So I know, Brian, you're going to mention him in the credits like you always do, but I'll give an extra just I love you, Kevin, right here. But with that, Brian, speaking of those credits, let's roll the outro music. Go ahead, read us the credits. We'll all get out of here.
Okay, you sound eager to get out of here. I won't take it personally. Thank you to everyone listening. Oh yeah, that's not how I started. This episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast was presented by Dobber Hockey and powered by our patrons, including our super supporters: Roman, Don, Michael, Jordan, Patrick, Aaron, Philip, Ivan, Sammy, Andrea, Zachary, Tom, Ryan, David, Ricard, and Patty. I love like having to take at least half a breath through that list. Thank you all for making me take that half breath. We appreciate it, and thanks to all our patrons again. Thank you, Kevin A. Bear, our incredible Cupful coordinator, and his team of robots, for keeping everybody having fun, engaged, informed. Amazing. There's so many tools too. There's a cupful.com/tools is a great place to go. Even if you're not in the Cupful, you might find some, you'll find Cupful percent rostered, which is IMO, a more helpful number than Yahoo percent rostered. Elon and Shams over at Game Day Tweets doing a fantastic job of finding all the most relevant stuff and putting it in a very easy and clean and neat and tidy place for us to see it. You can follow our Short Shifts crew. I'm going to thank them, Shams, Jeremy, Lewis, for keeping the content coming. Follow them at Short Shifts KK. Logo art by BrandonWeeb.com. Outro music by Pat Roach. This episode was researched with help from Dobber Hockey, Frozen Tools, Dobber Prospects, Natural Stat Trick, Evolving Hockey, Cap Friendly, The Athletic, HockeyGoalies.org, Hockey Reference, Hockey Viz, Hockey Database, Elite Prospects, and Yahoo.
Great job as always, Brian. Like I said, I really enjoyed my time with you today. And while I wait a whole long week before I get to chat with you again, behind the mic, maybe we'll DM a little bit. But yeah, what should I be doing while I'm waiting along with everyone else?
Please do all that you can to make sure that fantasy hockey is for everyone.
Nice. Thanks, everyone. Really awesome chat today. Always fun to
always appreciate the chat.
Engagement. Yeah. Hope you liked it.
Even though Elon banned me from participating at some point.
Yeah, well,
I understand. I have someone I work with who, like, sometimes I'm talking to them and they're just like open their computer and start typing. And like, I wish they would just tell, like, if I'm talking too much, let me know. Like, this is, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I do that too sometimes, for sure.
So do I.
But here we are. We're trying our best. I wasn't mad. I was just like kind of wanted to wait just because I wanted to. It's just kind of hard. Anyways, whatever. It was just,
We're
I appreciate
great.
the chat.
Everything's lovely. Thanks all.
Woo. See you. Bye, everybody.